Hi guys, and welcome to the Gentle History podcast. Tonight we step into a Victorian railway station while snow turns the night beyond the glass into a pale, shifting blur. You stand beneath a high iron roof as steam curls around the lamps. Luggage wheels rattle over stone, and a locomotive breathes like an enormous animal waiting in the dark. The cold finds every gap in your coat. It slips beneath your collar, settles around your wrists, and politely reminds you that Victorian travel is not designed around your personal comfort. You probably will not survive this with your modern expectations intact, though your pride may perish before the train even leaves. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Perhaps you are warm in bed. Perhaps rain taps your window. Perhaps, unlike you tonight, you have the central heating. Now, dim the lights and let the station gather around you. You trudge forward through snow that has blown beneath the roof. It melts on your boots and leaves dark marks on the stone. Above you, soot stains the iron beams. The glass panels tremble whenever the locomotive releases another sigh of steam. Every sound seems softened by the weather, then sharpened again by the hard surfaces of the station. A porter moves past with a handcart stacked high with trunks. His cap is dusted white. He calls to another worker, but the words vanish beneath the hiss of steam. The cart wheels strike a crack, and one trunk shifts dangerously before settling again. Nobody seems surprised. Victorian luggage often travels with the confidence of furniture and the manners of a falling wardrobe. You hold your ticket carefully between gloved fingers. It is small, stiff, and more important than it looks. By the middle decades of the 19th century, railways have transformed travel across Britain. Journeys that once take days by coach can now be completed in hours. Towns feel closer. News moves faster. People begin to think differently about distance. Yet your immediate concern is finding the correct carriage before your fingers go numb. The guard walks along the platform, checking doors and speaking with station staff. His lamp swings at his side, casting a warm circle across boots, snow, and the lower panels of the train. The carriages are largely wooden, painted dark, their sides glossy where snow has not settled. Brass handles catch the light. Small windows glow from within, each suggesting a private world of upholstery, breath, and expectation. You pass a compartment where a family is arranging itself with great effort. A child presses both hands to the glass. An older woman removes a hat pin of alarming length. A man lifts a carpet bag onto the rack and immediately looks as if he regrets every object he owns. Further along, a gentleman argues quietly with a porter about a missing case. The porter listens with the calm of someone who knows it is probably 6 feet away. A curious railway custom lingers around you. Some passengers carry foot warmers, metal containers filled with hot water and placed beneath the feet. On colder journeys, these may be exchanged at stations for freshly heated ones. It is practical, comforting, and slightly risky if the stopper is unreliable. There is something very Victorian about solving frozen toes with a metal container that might quietly leak into your boots. Your carriage waits near the middle of the train. The door stands open, and a narrow step gleams with wet snow. You place one hand on the brass rail. It is so cold that even through your glove it feels sharp. Behind you, someone coughs. Ahead of you, warm lamplight rests against red upholstery. You climb in. The compartment is smaller than you expect. The ceiling feels low, the space close. 2 padded benches face one another, firm despite their velvet covering. Above them, netted racks hold coats, parcels, and a hatbox tied with string. A lamp glows overhead, not brightly, but enough to soften the shadows. The air smells of wool, leather, damp cloth, coal smoke, and someone's winter lozenges. You choose the seat beside the window. Snow has gathered along the outer ledge, and the glass mists when you breathe near it. You wipe a small circle clear with your sleeve. Beyond it, the platform stretches under lamps floating in steam. Figures move in and out of view. A woman embraces a younger man. A porter raises a suitcase. A newspaper seller hurries beneath the roof, calling headlines into the smoky air. Historians still argue whether early railway travel made ordinary passengers feel liberated by speed or unsettled by the loss of familiar landscapes and slower rhythms. Sitting here, you suspect both feelings can exist at once. The carriage promises movement, possibility, and a strange new freedom. It also places you inside a wooden box behind a machine powered by fire, which is not exactly the restful arrangement your nervous system prefers. You remove your gloves and rub your hands together. The seat beneath you creaks. Somewhere under the carriage, metal knocks against metal. The vibration travels upward through the floor and into your boots. It is not yet motion, only preparation. But already the train feels alive. Other passengers enter. A man with a silver watch chain takes the opposite corner and nods without smiling. A woman in a dark travelling cloak settles beside him, arranging her skirts with precision. Another traveller appears at the last moment, breathless, carrying a bundle wrapped in brown paper. The door closes behind him with a solid click. For a few seconds, nobody speaks. You hear the wind press against the carriage. Snow whispers across the glass. The lamp flickers as though reconsidering its duties. Outside, the guard moves farther down the platform. A whistle sounds once, thin and piercing beneath the roof. Another answers from the locomotive. The gentleman opposite checks his watch. The woman beside him folds her hands. You lean closer to the window and watch the station clock hover above the steam. Then comes a heavy pull. The carriage jerks, pauses, and jerks again. The man with the parcel grips it tighter. The wheels begin to turn with a slow clatter. Lamps slide past the window. Porters drift backward. The waiting room, iron columns, and snow-covered signs begin to move away, though of course it is you who are moving now. The locomotive gathers strength. Each beat of the wheels settles into a rhythm. The station roof ends, and the open night receives you. Snow falls beyond the window, thick and silent, while the warm compartment rocks gently into darkness. You watch the last lamp vanish behind the train, and the long journey begins. The rhythm of the wheels settles beneath you, steady enough to feel reassuring, but never quite smooth enough to let you forget that you are travelling inside a wooden carriage, pulled through darkness by steam and fire. The compartment sways gently from side to side, every few moments. The window gives a faint rattle in its frame. The overhead lamp trembles with each uneven stretch of track, casting slow shadows across the padded seats and the faces opposite you. Now that the station is gone, you have time to examine your surroundings more carefully. The upholstery is a deep red, though years of soot, dust, and winter coats have softened its colour. The velvet feels coarse beneath your palm. It is padded well enough to impress a passenger at first glance, but firm enough to remind you that comfort in the Victorian age is often more decorative than practical. Brass fittings shine along the door and window frame. They are polished, but not perfectly. Small smudges remain where gloved hands have turned handles or pulled straps. Above your head, the luggage rack sags slightly beneath the weight of bags, rolled blankets, and the gentleman's carefully placed hat box. You glance upward and immediately wonder whether luggage falling onto sleeping passengers is considered a normal railway inconvenience. It probably is. First-class travel is meant to offer privacy, warmth, and distinction, By the later 19th century, many first-class compartments provide padded seating, better lighting, cleaner interiors, and fewer passengers than the cheaper carriages. Yet luxury remains relative. There is no broad seat that reclines at the touch of a button. There is no quiet ventilation system. There is no friendly voice announcing that snacks are available in another carriage. There is, however, velvet. Victorians trust velvet to solve a remarkable number of social problems. The gentleman opposite sits upright with his back barely touching the seat. His coat is dark and finely cut. His collar rises stiffly against his neck, and his watch chain rests across his waistcoat like a small golden declaration of reliability. He looks toward the window, then toward the door, then toward the window again. You suspect he's checking whether anyone is likely to enter. The woman beside him remains composed beneath her travelling cloak. Her bonnet is tied neatly under her chin, and a small brooch catches the lamplight whenever the carriage moves. Her hands rest on a leather bag placed firmly in her lap. She's arranged herself so carefully that the rocking train seems almost rude for disturbing her. The passenger beside you, the man with the brown paper parcel, breathes more heavily than the others. Melted snow darkens the shoulders of his coat. He's removed his gloves and tucked them into his pocket, revealing fingers reddened by cold. The paper parcel sits between his boots. It gives off a faint smell of cheese. Nobody comments. Victorian railway etiquette depends heavily on pretending not to notice other people. You share a small enclosed space with strangers, but polite behaviour requires distance. You avoid staring. You do not ask unnecessary questions. You control your luggage, your clothing, your children, and ideally your breathing. Of course, not everyone succeeds. A first-class compartment is not always occupied by members of the aristocracy. Business owners, lawyers, prosperous merchants, senior officials, and wealthy travellers may all purchase these tickets. Railway companies use class divisions to separate passengers by price and social expectation, but the boundaries remain imperfect. Money can purchase a better seat. It cannot always purchase graceful manners. The carriage gives a sudden jolt. The parcel near your feet shifts forward. The man catches it with his boot and mutters an apology. The gentleman opposite nods. The woman does not react at all. You wonder whether she has spent years training herself not to notice parcels. A small leather strap hangs beside the window. You touch it carefully and discover that it controls the upper section of glass. Fresh air may enter if you pull the window down, though fresh air in this case means freezing wind mixed with soot and sparks. You leave it closed. The compartment is already warm enough to soften the dampness in everyone's coats. Moisture gathers on the glass. The air thickens with wool, leather, tobacco smoke carried in from the platform, and the quiet scent of perfume. There are no wide corridors connecting every part of the train. Many Victorian carriages are divided into separate compartments, with doors opening directly onto the platform. Once the journey begins, passengers may remain enclosed with the same strangers until the next stop. This design offers privacy, but it can also produce unease. Historians continue to debate whether compartment travel encouraged a stronger sense of personal respectability or simply created more opportunities for suspicion, gossip, and discomfort. You look at the closed door. There's no easy way to leave while the train is moving. The thought is not especially soothing. Still, the arrangement has its charms. The compartment feels sheltered from the snowy night. Lamplight gathers in the corners. The walls absorb some of the sound from the rails. You're enclosed in a moving room, a little island of upholstery travelling through fields you cannot see. A quirky feature of first-class travel is that some carriages include small mirrors, decorative panels, or framed prints intended to make the compartment resemble a private sitting room. Railway companies understand that wealthy passengers prefer movement to feel domestic. A mirror, apparently, can make a rattling wooden box feel like home. Your compartment has no picture, but a narrow strip of polished wood runs beneath the window. The grain is dark and smooth. Beneath the seat, a metal foot warmer rests near your boots. Its heat is already fading, but it still offers a little comfort. You slide your feet closer. The warmth travels slowly through the soles of your boots. Outside, snow sweeps past the glass in pale streaks. Telegraph poles appear and vanish. A signal lamp glows red in the distance, then disappears behind you. The gentleman finally speaks. He remarks that the weather is worsening. The woman replies that it often does. This exchange appears to satisfy everyone. Silence returns. You settle deeper into the corner. The velvet presses against your shoulder. The carriage sways. Your reflection hovers faintly in the dark window, mixed with the passing snow. For a moment, you cannot tell whether you're looking outward or inward. The man with the parcel begins to untie the string. The knot resists him. He pulls gently, then more firmly. The paper crackles in the quiet compartment. The gentleman glances toward it. The woman lowers her eyes. You watch from the edge of your vision. At last the string loosens. The smell of cheese grows stronger. He removes a small cloth, then a piece of bread, then something wrapped in another layer of paper. The ritual is careful and almost ceremonial. He notices everyone noticing without looking. He offers no one anything. This too is proper railway behaviour. The train curves, and the compartment leans slightly. Your shoulder presses against the wall. The lamp swings above you, somewhere farther along the train. A door slams, followed by the muffled voice of the guard. You begin to understand the peculiar intimacy of first-class travel. You're close enough to hear another passenger breathe, yet expected to behave as though each person occupies a private world. The gentleman has his watch. The woman has her leather bag. The man beside you has his cheese, and you have the window, where snow continues to fall beyond the glass as the carriage carries all of you deeper into the night. The smell of cheese lingers as the train gathers speed. But another scent slowly overcomes it. Coal smoke enters through tiny gaps around the window and door, dry and bitter, carrying the taste of the engine into the compartment. You notice it first at the back of your throat. Then a grain of soot lands on the polished wood beneath the glass. The locomotive is several carriages ahead, yet it makes its presence known everywhere. It pulls you through the night with fire in its belly, steam in its cylinders, and a crew working in heat so fierce that the snowy landscape beyond their cab must feel like another planet. The wheels strike the joints in the rails with a regular beat. Metal answers metal beneath the floor. The sound passes through the carriage frame, through the velvet seat, and into your bones. It is not unpleasant once your body accepts it. The rhythm becomes something like a mechanical lullaby, though a rather determined one. A steam locomotive works through a simple but powerful exchange. Coal burns in the firebox. The heat turns water in the boiler into steam. That steam presses against pistons, and the pistons drive the wheels through connecting rods that rise and fall beside the engine. A large locomotive can consume remarkable quantities of coal and water during a journey. The boiler holds the pressure inside a long iron shell, and gauges help the crew judge whether the engine is working safely. Too little pressure means delay, too much is dangerous. Every mile therefore depends upon attention, experience, and the careful reading of a machine that never truly becomes quiet. In the cab, the fireman shovels coal into the glowing firebox. Too little heat, and the engine loses pressure. Too much careless firing, and coal is wasted while smoke thickens above the train. The driver watches the line, the signals, the gauges, and the behaviour of the locomotive. He listens as much as he looks. A skilled driver learns the language of steam through hisses, knocks, vibrations, and changes in the exhaust. You, meanwhile, learn the language of steam through soot on your sleeve. The carriage window gives another rattle. A faint draft slips across your cheek. The woman opposite adjusts her cloak without speaking. The gentleman glances toward the ceiling as if the railway company has personally arranged the draft to inconvenience him. Outside, the engine releases a long whistle. Whistles are vital on Victorian railways. They warn workers, announce movement, and signal the train's approach where roads cross the tracks. The whistle fades. The rails continue their steady reply. You wipe the soot from the wooden ledge with one finger. It leaves a black streak across your glove. This is one of the less glamorous truths of steam travel. Even passengers in first class cannot entirely escape dirt. Smoke enters through open windows, ventilation gaps, and carriage doors. Fine particles settle on faces, clothes, luggage, and food. A pale collar may begin a journey as a symbol of respectability and finish it looking as though it has spent the evening near a chimney. Railway companies know passengers complain about soot, but there is only so much that can be done while a coal-burning engine pulls the train. Victorian comfort often involves choosing the least irritating form of discomfort. A quirky solution appears in the form of railway face protectors and travelling veils. Some passengers use light coverings to shield their skin from dust and smoke. Others carry special caps, goggles, or cloths. The man beside you folds the paper around his remaining cheese. He looks at the soot on the window ledge. Then he wraps the parcel again with greater care. The engine works harder as the line begins to climb. You feel the change before you understand it. The carriage trembles with effort. Steam engines do not produce a smooth, silent force. Their power arrives in pulses. The pistons push, the rods turn, and the wheels grip the rails when the track is wet or icy. That grip can fail. Driving wheels may spin without moving the train forward, sending sparks or steam around the engine while the crew works to regain control. Sand can be dropped onto the rails to improve traction. Even a great machine of iron and brass sometimes needs a little dry grit beneath its feet. Historians still argue whether the popular image of the Victorian locomotive as a symbol of unstoppable progress reflects how ordinary people truly felt, or whether it hides a much more anxious relationship with speed, noise, pollution, and danger from your seat. The engine feels both magnificent and slightly alarming. It is powerful enough to carry hundreds of tons through snow. It is also dependent on fire, pressure, human judgment, and countless moving parts. The gentleman opposite removes a handkerchief and wipes a small mark from his cuff. His expression suggests moral disappointment. The lamp above you flickers again. Unlike the engine, it produces only a modest warmth. Early railway carriages may be lit by oil lamps mounted in the roof, though later trains increasingly use gas lighting. You hear a sudden metallic clank from beneath the floor. Everyone pauses. The man with the parcel stops tying his string. The woman raises her eyes. The gentleman listens. Nothing follows except the familiar beat of the wheels. The passengers relax without admitting they were concerned. The sound may have come from the couplings between carriages. Early trains often use chains and buffers that allow a certain amount of slack when the locomotive pulls or slows. That slack moves through the train, causing jerks and knocks from one carriage to the next. The sensation is sometimes called a snatch, which sounds almost playful until it throws your shoulder against the wall. Another pull travels through the train now. Your body shifts forward, then settles back. The luggage rack creaks overhead. You glance at the hat box. It remains in place, for the moment. Beyond the glass, sparks rise from the locomotive and sweep past like brief orange stars. They disappear into the snow almost as soon as you see them. The contrast is beautiful. Fire against winter. warm light against a landscape drained of colour. You lean closer to the window. The cold glass touches your temple. The steam from your breath clouds the view, then clears. Ahead. A dark curve of smoke bends above the train. It catches the faint light from the engine and dissolves into the night. The locomotive continues to climb, breathing harder, pulling every carriage behind it. You feel the strain in the floor. You hear it in the rails. You smell it in the soot. And slowly, as the compartment rocks beneath the trembling lamp, the great machine carries you higher into the falling snow. The engine crests the rising ground, and the strain beneath your feet eases. The hard pull becomes a steadier glide. Snow continues to press against the darkness beyond the glass, but inside the compartment. Attention turns quietly from the machinery to the people travelling with you. The gentleman opposite returns his handkerchief to his pocket. His coat is cut from dark wool, smooth at the shoulders and carefully brushed. The silver chain across his waistcoat catches the lamp whenever the carriage sways. At one end sits his watch. At the other may be a key, a seal, or some small object intended to suggest that his life contains important drawers. His boots are polished despite the weather. A faint line of melted snow darkens the leather near the soles, and this seems to offend him more than the soot did. Clothing in Victorian Britain communicates rank, occupation, respectability, and income before a traveller says a word. A well-made coat, clean linen, polished footwear, and a proper hat help announce that a man belongs among respectable company. For women, the signals are even more detailed. Fabric, gloves, bonnet shape, jewellery, and the condition of a travelling cloak may all invite judgment. You glance at the woman beside him. Her cloak is practical but elegant, fastened at the throat with a modest brooch. Beneath it, you can see the edge of a dark dress and a narrow strip of pale cuff. Her gloves remain on. Removing them in a shared compartment might feel too informal, especially among strangers. A small reticule rests beneath her hands. It is little more than a decorated drawstring bag, yet she guards it with quiet firmness. It may contain money, smelling salts, a handkerchief, keys, a railway timetable, and perhaps letters that matter more than anything else in the carriage. The man beside you is dressed differently. His coat is sturdy rather than fashionable. One elbow shows careful repair. His boots are heavy. With dried mud trapped in the seams beneath the melting snow, he might be a clerk travelling home, a commercial agent carrying samples, a small shopkeeper, or a farmer with business in another town. Victorian railway passengers often study such details while pretending not to. Social observation becomes a silent pastime. You notice fabric, posture, speech, luggage, and hands. Then you create an entire biography from a button. It is not especially fair. It is extremely human. The brown parcel near the man's boots has been tied again. The scent of cheese is weaker now, though not defeated. He catches you glancing downward and shifts the parcel closer to the wall. The gentleman speaks first. He asks whether the line ahead is likely to remain clear. The question is directed toward nobody in particular, which allows everyone to answer without appearing eager. The parcel owner says the snowfall was lighter at the previous town. The woman remarks that the wind is changing. You look through the misted glass, where snow streams sideways under the force of the train, and decide that the wind appears to be changing into more wind. No one asks for your opinion. This is perhaps fortunate. A central feature of 19th century railway travel is the sudden mixing of people who might rarely share a room elsewhere. Railways place strangers from different regions, professions, and social backgrounds within a few feet of one another. Separate ticket classes maintain important divisions, but even first-class compartments contain variety. An industrialist may sit beside a country solicitor, a widow may travel near a visiting lecturer, a prosperous shop owner may share space with a minor aristocrat, who has recently discovered that titles do not pay every bill. The railway does not erase class. It simply shakes several versions of it together for a few hours. The woman opposite turns her face toward the window. Her reflection appears beside yours in the glass, pale and indistinct. She watches the snow, but perhaps she also watches the compartment through the reflection. Mirrors and windows allow a polite person to observe others without openly staring. You try the same method. The gentleman's eyes are closed, though his posture remains rigid. The man beside you rubs one thumb across a rough patch on his palm. His hands suggest work with paper, tools, reins, or crates, rather than a life spent entirely at a desk. The woman's luggage is limited to the leather bag on her lap and a small case in the rack. This may indicate discipline, experience, or the presence of a larger trunk in the luggage van. An unusual custom among wealthier travellers is the use of personalised travelling cases fitted with compartments for brushes, bottles, writing tools, medicines, and even folding cups. Some are so carefully arranged that opening one resembles inspecting a miniature household. A person might endure cold, soot, and delay. But heaven forbid the hairbrush lacks its own velvet slot. The train enters a shallow cutting. Snow-covered banks rise on either side, reflecting a dim light into the compartment. For several seconds, every face becomes clearer. The gentleman is older than you first thought. Fine lines spread from the corners of his eyes. The woman appears tired beneath her composed expression. The man beside you has a pale mark around one finger, where a ring once rested. Though whether it has been removed through grief, work, or simple inconvenience is impossible to know. Specialists remain divided over how much freedom railway compartments offered Victorian travellers. Some see them as temporary spaces where normal social boundaries softened. Others argue that passengers became even more cautious, performing respectability with greater care because they were trapped among unfamiliar observers. Your compartment suggests both. No one has exchanged a name, yet each person has already revealed something through silence. The train rocks more sharply, and the woman's bag slips slightly. You catch it before it falls. She thanks you. Her voice is low and precise, for one brief moment. The atmosphere changes. You're no longer merely a shape by the window. You're a fellow traveller who has performed a small service. The gentleman opens his eyes. The man beside you gives a quiet nod. Then everyone returns to stillness. The contact has lasted only seconds, but shared journeys are built from such moments. A door held open, a parcel lifted, a warning offered before a station, a little conversation about weather that means nothing and therefore feels safe. Beyond the glass, a cluster of cottages appears. Their windows glow amber against the snow. Smoke rises from several chimneys. You imagine families near fireplaces, boots drying by the hearth, kettles beginning to sing. The woman watches the cottages too. Perhaps she's travelling toward home, perhaps away from it. The gentleman checks his watch once more, and the silver lid closes with a soft click. The parcel owner leans back and folds his arms. His breathing settles into the rhythm of the wheels. You let your shoulder rest against the padded wall. Around you, 4 strangers sit within the same small pool of lamplight, carrying separate histories, worries, destinations, and carefully packed belongings through the winter night. The cottages fade behind you, their amber windows swallowed one by the snowy dark, for a moment. The glass reflects only the compartment, the trembling lamp, and 4 travellers arranged beneath the luggage rack like figures in a narrow painting. Then the wind strikes the carriage broadside. The window shivers in its frame. A thin breath of cold air slips through the join beside your shoulder and traces the edge of your collar. You turn slightly, pressing your coat against the gap, but the draught simply finds another route and curls across your wrist. The warmth inside the compartment suddenly feels less certain. You have the foot warmer beneath your boots, the combined heat of several bodies, and the small lamp overhead. None of these can entirely resist a winter night moving at railway speed. Victorian railway carriages are built mainly from timber for much of the 19th century, fixed over iron frames and running on metal wheels. Wood keeps the vehicles lighter than a structure made entirely from iron, but it also allows tiny movements around panels, doors, and windows. As the carriage ages, gaps appear, damp swells the boards, cold contracts them. The whole body creaks and shifts as it travels. The result is a compartment that looks enclosed while quietly admitting the weather. Snow sticks to the outer side of the glass. Some flakes melt at once, leaving winding trails of water. Others cling in white clusters along the corners, where the window is coldest. You wipe away the mist with your sleeve. The fabric squeaks faintly against the glass. Outside, the landscape has nearly vanished. Fields, hedges, and roads are buried beneath a single pale surface. Only dark trees remain visible, their branches lifted like black hands against the sky. The train rushes between them. A branch passes close to the window, heavy with snow. For an instant, it seems near enough to touch. The gentleman opposite notices the draught. He reaches toward the window strap and tests the frame, though there is little he can do after a brief inspection. He sits back with the grave expression of a man who has confirmed that winter is indeed occurring. The woman draws her cloak tighter. The passenger beside you places both hands around one knee and rubs his palms against the cloth. The metal foot warmer has cooled considerably since departure. What remains is a weak patch of heat, more memory than comfort. At larger stations, attendants sometimes replace cold foot warmers with freshly heated ones. These containers may be filled with hot water, hot sand, or heated material designed to retain warmth for part of the journey. Passengers welcome them, though they can become uncomfortable if placed too close to the skin. One peculiar complaint concerns travellers discovering that a foot warmer is either almost useless or so hot that it threatens to roast the toes through several layers of leather. Victorian heating rarely settles for moderation. You shift your boots away from the metal, then immediately slide them back. The cold near the door is worse. A fine line of white has formed along the lower edge, where wind-driven snow has entered and begun to melt. It darkens the floorboards beneath the gentleman's boots. He notices. His eyebrows lift. Again. He appears to take the matter personally. The carriage lamp flickers as the train enters another exposed stretch of track. Its flame leans inside the glass cover. Shadows lengthen across the ceiling, then shrink again. There is comfort in the small light, but you can see how easily it might fail. A strong draught, a damaged fitting, or a shortage of fuel could leave the compartment dark. Night travel before dependable electric lighting depends upon lamps that require cleaning, filling, trimming, and attention. You imagine the same space without its glow. The strangers opposite would become voices and outlines. The window would turn completely black. Every knock beneath the floor would sound larger. You decide to appreciate the lamp while it remains cooperative. Snow begins to strike the glass more sharply. The soft whisper becomes a dry tapping. Ice grains bounce against the window, scattered by the speed of the train. The woman raises one gloved finger and touches the glass. She withdraws it almost at once. Cold travels through the thin pane with remarkable efficiency. Researchers continue to disagree about how comfortable ordinary Victorian passengers actually found winter railway journeys. Company advertisements praise speed, shelter, and modern convenience, while diaries and letters often mention frozen feet, smoky air, stiff seats, and relentless draughts. Comfort depends upon class, carriage design, distance, weather, and a traveller's talent for complaining. Your own talent is developing nicely. The train crosses a bridge. You know it from the sudden change in sound. The wheels become louder, sharper, almost hollow. Beneath you lies darkness, perhaps a river moving under sheets of ice. The carriage sways. The man beside you grips the edge of the seat. The woman keeps her hand on the leather bag. The gentleman looks toward the window, though there is nothing to see except snow flying sideways across blackness. For several seconds, the noise seems to rise from everywhere at once. Iron vibrates beneath the floor. Wind presses against the panels. The lamp trembles above your head. Then the bridge ends. The wheels return to their softer rhythm over earth. Everyone releases a little tension without mentioning it. You breathe onto the glass and make another clear circle. Far below the embankment, a road curves through the snow. A cart stands near a gate, almost buried. Two dark shapes move beside it. Perhaps horses, perhaps people attempting to free a wheel. The sight disappears before you can be certain. Railways promise reliable movement through bad weather, but snow remains a serious obstacle. Drifts can block cuttings. Ice can interfere with points. Signals may become difficult to see. Workers are sometimes sent out with shovels, brooms, lamps, and tools to clear the line by hand. There is no grand machine waiting everywhere to solve the problem. Often there are simply cold men in heavy coats, standing beside the rails in the dark. The thought makes the compartment feel more sheltered. You may be chilled, but you're sitting on velvet, somewhere outside. A signalman may be walking through snow deep enough to enter his boots. The train rounds a curve, and sparks appear once more beyond the front of the carriage. They scatter into the storm, brief orange flecks swallowed by white. A stronger draught reaches your neck. You lift your collar. The man beside you unties his scarf and offers one end of it toward the gap near the window. Together. You press the thick wool into the narrow opening. It does not stop the cold entirely, but the sharp stream softens. He nods with satisfaction. You thank him quietly. The gentleman watches the repair. After a pause, he reaches into his coat and produces a folded newspaper, without comment. He places it along the lower edge of the window, blocking another thin seam. The woman adjusts her cloak so the part of it covers the chilled leather bag. No one speaks, yet the compartment becomes warmer through a small conspiracy of wool, paper, posture, and shared patience. Outside, the snow continues without mercy. Inside, four strangers defend a fragile pocket of warmth as the wooden carriage carries you onward through the frozen night. The newspaper remains tucked against the lower edge of the window, the scarf still softening the draught beside your shoulder. For several miles, the small arrangements hold. The compartment keeps its fragile warmth. And the snow beyond the glass becomes a steady pale current flowing backward into the night. Then the train begins to slow. At first, the change is so gentle that you notice only the altered rhythm beneath your boots. The wheels no longer strike the rails with the same hurried certainty. Their beat stretches wider. The carriage rocks forward, settles, and rocks again. The gentleman opposite retrieves his newspaper from the window and folds it neatly along its original creases. The scarf is removed from the gap, allowing cold air to return with immediate enthusiasm. Outside, a signal lamp appears through the snow. Its colour glows against the darkness, dimmed by steam and weather. A second light follows. Then come the shapes of low buildings, a water tower, and the outline of a platform roof. The woman lifts her head. The man beside you reaches for his parcel. Nobody has announced the station, yet everyone prepares at once. Railway passengers learn to read the train itself, slowing wheels, changing echoes, whistles, and the sudden appearance of lamps all warn that a stop is approaching. The locomotive releases a long breath of steam. White vapour sweeps past the windows and briefly hides the platform entirely. When it clears, you see porters waiting beneath the lamps, their coats dusted with snow. The train enters the station with a final sequence of jolts. Brakes grip, couplings tighten, your body leans forward, the luggage rack creaks above you, but the hatbox remains loyal to gravity. The train stops. Almost immediately, the platform fills with motion. Doors open along the carriages, boots strike stone. Porters call destinations. A bell rings somewhere beneath the roof, its sound bright and metallic in the cold air. The man beside you stands, carrying his parcel carefully. He opens the compartment door, and winter rushes inside. The cold is astonishing. It arrives with steam, snow, coal smoke, and the smell of hot food. That final scent pulls you toward the platform. You step down, one hand gripping the brass rail. Snow has been swept from the central path, but the stone remains wet and slippery. The station roof offers some protection, though flakes still drift beneath it and settle on hats, shoulders, baskets, and luggage. A refreshment room glows farther along the platform. Victorian railway companies soon discover that passengers require food as well as speed. Major stations establish refreshment rooms where travellers can purchase tea, coffee, bread, sandwiches, pies, cakes, and stronger drinks. These rooms become familiar features of railway life, though their quality varies wildly. Some offer respectable meals served at tables. Others provide a hurried contest between hunger and the station clock. You follow the scent. Inside the refreshment room, warmth gathers near a large urn. Steam rises from its polished surface. Cups stand in rows across the counter. Behind them, plates display thick sandwiches, meat pies, seed cake, buns, and pale slices of something that may once have been ham. A woman behind the counter moves with impressive speed. She pours tea, collects coins, cuts bread, and answers 3 questions at once without appearing to listen to any of them. The room is crowded. Passengers remain wrapped in coats and scarves. Some eat standing, others balance cups on narrow tables. A commercial traveller checks his watch between every bite. As though punctuality might improve digestion, you join the line. The train may stop for 10 minutes. It may stop for 5. Nobody seems completely certain. This uncertainty gives railway refreshment its special flavour. A well-known complaint of the 19th century concerns the railway sandwich. It develops a reputation for dryness, toughness, and mysterious age. Humorous writers describe sandwiches that appear to have travelled farther than the passengers buying them. You inspect the nearest example. 2 thick slices of bread hold a narrow strip of meat and a faint suggestion of mustard. The edges are curling. It looks capable of surviving another winter. You choose a pie instead. The crust is warm on top and cold beneath. Inside, the filling is peppery, rich, and difficult to identify with confidence. Still, warmth spreads through your fingers as you hold it, and this alone feels luxurious. You order tea. The cup is thick and heavy. The tea is strong enough to wake a sleeping porter at 20 paces. Milk softens it slightly. While sugar settles at the bottom because there is no time to stir properly, you take a sip. It is hot, bitter, and wonderful. Near the counter, the woman from your compartment purchases a small bun and asks for tea. The gentleman stands beside her, watching the station clock with visible distrust. The man with the cheese parcel has disappeared. Perhaps to another carriage, perhaps into the crowd, perhaps simply behind a very large trunk. A curious railway practice is the use of baskets passed directly to carriage windows. At some stations, vendors sell food without requiring passengers to leave their seats. Tea may arrive in cups that are meant to be returned before departure, creating a frantic final exchange when the whistle sounds. Cups vanish. Coins fall, passengers run, the railway remains calm. Commentators have long disagreed over whether refreshment rooms genuinely improved travel or merely created a new kind of organised panic. Timetables encourage speed, but eating requires time. The result is a uniquely Victorian struggle to consume pie with dignity while listening for a whistle. You take another bite, a bell rings, every head turns. The gentleman puts down a cup that is still half full. The woman wraps her bun in paper. A porter calls that the train is preparing to depart. The room erupts into movement. You swallow too quickly, burn your tongue on the tea, and carry the remaining pie toward the platform. Behind you, someone demands change. Another passenger searches beneath the table for a glove. Steam thickens around the carriages. The guard walks along the train, closing doors and urging travellers aboard. You hurry over the wet stone, trying not to slip while protecting your tea, your pie, and what remains of your dignity. The woman reaches the compartment before you. The gentleman holds the door open, though his expression suggests this is an emergency service rather than an act of kindness. You climb inside. The cup must remain behind, so you hand it to a boy collecting empties near the step. He takes it without looking and turns immediately toward another passenger. The door closes. A whistle sounds. You settle into your seat with the last piece of pie wrapped in paper on your lap. The woman unwraps her bun. The gentleman produces a small silver flask and adds a discreet measure to his unfinished drink. The man with the cheese parcel appears at the final moment, carrying a paper bag that smells strongly of onions. He enters, breathless but pleased, and drops into the seat beside you just as the train jerks forward. The station begins to slide away. Lamps move past the glass. Porters blur into steam. The refreshment room remains visible for a few seconds, warm and crowded beneath its glowing windows. Then the roof ends. Snow returns beyond the carriage. You bite into the final piece of pie as the train gathers speed, and the compartment fills with the mixed aromas of tea, pastry, onions, damp wool, and the patient cheese that began the evening. The scent of onions settles into the compartment with surprising confidence. It mingles with pastry, damp wool, tea, coal smoke, and the faithful remains of the cheese parcel, creating an atmosphere that no railway company would ever describe in an advertisement. The train leaves the station behind and enters open country once more. You feel the speed increase beneath your feet. The wheels find their familiar rhythm, and the lamp resumes its gentle trembling above the seats. Snow still sweeps past the glass, but the station has reminded you that the railway is never truly asleep, even now, while passengers lean back and prepare for darkness. Hundreds of people remain awake along the line. A guard moves somewhere behind your compartment. You hear a door close, then the faint scrape of boots on a step. On many Victorian trains, guards travel in special vans fitted with handbrakes, luggage space, lamps, and equipment. They watch the train, assist passengers, check tickets, communicate with station staff, and apply braking power when needed. Their work demands constant attention. A railway carriage may feel like a sealed little room, but the guard must think about the whole train. He listens for unusual sounds. He watches for signals. He knows where the train should stop and when it should pass certain points. In bad weather, every task becomes harder. You imagine him standing in his van, surrounded by parcels and mailbags, feeling the same jolts that travel through your seat. A small stove may provide some warmth, though the door opens often enough to make comfort temporary. The gentleman opposite finishes his drink and closes the silver flask. His movements are discreet, but not quite discreet enough to prevent everyone from noticing. The woman eats her bun in small pieces. The man beside you opens his onion-scented bag and removes something resembling a savoury tart. The onions, apparently, were only the warning. The train whistles again, far ahead. A signalman hears it through the snow. Signalmen are essential to railway safety. They work in boxes positioned beside the track, operating levers connected to signals and points. Their decisions control which train may enter a section of line and which route it will follow. During the 19th century, railway signalling becomes increasingly organised through systems designed to prevent two trains from occupying the same stretch of track. The block system divides the line into sections. A train should not enter a block until the one ahead has cleared it. This principle sounds obvious now. It takes time, accidents, experiments, regulation, and a great deal of argument before it becomes standard practice. The train passes a signal box perched above the line. Its windows glow warmly through the snow for one brief second. You glimpse a man inside, standing beside a row of tall levers. Then the box is gone, swallowed by the storm. His room may smell of oil, coal, tea, and damp clothing. A clock hangs on the wall. A telegraph instrument clicks or rings. Lamps require attention. Records must be written carefully. The signalman cannot simply decide that the weather is unpleasant and close his eyes. Your compartment, by comparison, feels almost indulgent. Another important worker is the fireman, labouring in the locomotive cab. While you sit with your cooled foot warmer, he stands beside an open firebox hot enough to redden his face even in winter. He shovels coal in a careful pattern, spreading it across the fire so that steam pressure remains steady. The work is heavy, skilled, and exhausting. Coal dust settles into his clothes and skin. He must judge the needs of the engine while the train climbs, slows, accelerates, and fights against the weather. A curious detail of locomotive work is that some crews develop personal preferences about the shape and placement of the fire. One fireman may favour a thicker bed of coal near certain parts of the firebox, while another reads the flame by colour and sound. To a passenger, it is simply a fire. To the fireman, it is a living surface that must be fed correctly. Writers of railway history remain divided on how much early safety depended upon machinery and how much depended upon the experience, discipline, and instinct of individual workers. Rules matter, signals matter, brakes matter, yet the entire system still relies upon tired human beings making sound decisions in darkness, fog, snow, and noise. The train slows slightly. You press your face closer to the glass. Beside the track, two workers stand near a set of points. Their lanterns glow at knee height. One bends with a tool while the other watches the approaching train. Snow gathers around their boots. Points are moving rails that guide trains from one track to another. Ice can freeze them in place. Packed snow can prevent a proper movement in severe weather. Workers may clear them by hand, using brooms, shovels, metal tools, and sometimes heated methods to loosen the ice. The men step back as your train passes. One raises his lamp. You see his face only briefly, pale beneath a cap. Then darkness takes him. The sight stays with you. Inside. The woman has finished her bun and folded the paper into a neat square. The gentleman closes his eyes once more. The passenger beside you chews slowly, apparently confident that onions strengthen the spirit. Outside. Someone is standing beside steel rails in a snowstorm so that your carriage may continue. Porters also work through the night at larger stations. They move trunks, parcels, baskets, animals, newspapers, and mail. Some help passengers into carriages. Others direct luggage toward the correct van. A task made difficult by poor labels, hurried owners, and the Victorian belief that a short journey requires 3 trunks and a hat box. At small stations, one employee may perform several jobs as he may sell tickets, handle luggage, tend lamps, open gates, carry messages, and assist the station master. A tiny rural station can therefore depend upon one person doing the work of an entire modern department. Sleep is not included. The railway also employs plate layers, who inspect and maintain the track. The name comes from an earlier period when rails were sometimes called plates. These workers patrol the line, tighten fittings, replace damaged parts, check alignment, and search for trouble. Winter makes the rails contract. Frost affects the ground beneath them. Snow hides defects. Water freezes in cracks. A small fault, ignored long enough, can become a serious danger. You listen to the wheels more carefully now. Each repeated beat suggests that someone has inspected the route beneath you. Each bridge, signal, switch. An embankment exists because workers build it, repair it, and watch it. The railway appears grand in paintings and posters. Locomotives charge through dramatic landscapes. Stations rise like palaces of glass and iron. Famous engineers receive statues and biographies, yet the night railway belongs just as much to the porter lifting a trunk, the fireman feeding coal, the guard testing a brake, and the signalman staring through snow at a lamp. The compartment sways. The onion tart disappears into its paper bag. You rest your head against the wall and watch another signal glow through the darkness. It changes as the train approaches, allowing you onward. Somewhere inside a small illuminated box, an unseen hand has moved a lever. The wheels carry you forward, behind the glass. The signal fades into white air, and the workers of the night remain at their posts while you travel deeper into sleep. The signal disappears behind the train, and the compartment settles once more into its patient rhythm. Wheels strike the rails in measured intervals. The lamp trembles. Snow slides across the window in pale streaks, while somewhere inside the gentleman's coat, a watch continues counting seconds with far greater confidence than anyone else in the carriage. He opens his eyes and reaches for it again. The silver case clicks beneath his thumb. He studies the face, then looks toward the dark window as though the landscape itself has failed to keep an appointment. You begin to understand that time aboard a Victorian train is not merely something noticed. It is something obeyed. Before the railway age, towns across Britain commonly keep their own local time. Noon arrives when the sun reaches its highest point in that particular place. A clock in one town may differ from a clock in another by several minutes. This matters little when journeys are slow and schedules flexible. A coach leaving vaguely after breakfast does not require the entire country to agree on the exact meaning of 10 o'clock. Railways change that. Trains run between distant places, connect with other services, cross busy junctions, and share tracks. A difference of 5 or 10 minutes can no longer be treated as a charming local custom. It can mean a missed connection, a confused passenger, or two trains approaching the same stretch of line at the wrong moment. Railway companies therefore adopt standardized time, usually based on Greenwich. By the middle of the 19th century, railway time spreads widely across Britain, encouraged by timetables, station clocks, and telegraph communication. You glance at the gentleman's watch. It is not simply jewellery, it is a private piece of the railway system. Every station along the line is expected to recognise the same minutes. Guards, drivers, signalmen, clerks, and passengers all depend upon a shared clock. The train may be delayed by snow, but everyone must agree on precisely how delayed it is. The idea sounds perfectly ordinary to you. Your modern life is arranged by clocks that agree with devices, networks, offices, airports, and alarms. Yet for many Victorian travellers, railway time represents a striking change. The sun no longer rules the day alone. Mechanical clocks begin to dictate when people depart, arrive, eat, work, and wait. The woman opposite removes a small timetable from her leather bag. It unfolds into a delicate sheet covered in narrow columns and tiny print. Station names run down the page. Times stretch across it in rows. Several services seem to depart within minutes of one another, though the type is so small that reading it beneath a shaking lamp requires excellent eyesight and a forgiving spirit. She traces one line with a gloved finger. The gentleman notices. He asks whether the train is expected to reach the junction before midnight. She replies that it should, provided the delay has not increased. The words provided and should hang in the compartment like two small warnings. Printed railway timetables become essential tools during the Victorian period. At first, individual companies publish their own schedules. As the network grows more complicated, guides combine information from several lines, allowing travellers to plan longer journeys. One famous railway guide begins publication in the 19th century and eventually becomes closely associated with the vast puzzle of British train travel. Such guides list departures, connections, distances, fares, and sometimes useful notes about hotels or onward transport. Useful is a generous word. To read one successfully, you must understand columns, symbols, route changes, different companies, and the possibility that the train has already ignored the page entirely. The woman turns the timetable slightly toward the lamp. You can see faint pencil marks beside one station. Perhaps she's planned a connection. Perhaps someone expects her at a particular hour. Perhaps her composed expression hides the quiet worry that the snow will leave her stranded in a waiting room with one bench and no fire. The guard appears outside the compartment window at the next slow section of track, moving carefully along the platform edge of a minor halt when the train stops. He opens the door and asks to inspect tickets. You retrieve yours from an inner pocket. The small card feels stiff between your fingers. Victorian railway tickets are commonly printed on durable card and may be checked, clipped, punched, collected, or marked during the journey. The ticket records the class of travel, the route, and sometimes whether the journey is single or return. The guard takes it and punches a neat hole near one corner. The action is quick, practiced, and final. A wonderfully odd feature of ticket inspection is the variety of punches used by railway staff. Some produce distinctive shapes or patterns, allowing companies to identify where or by whom a ticket has been checked. A tiny star, crescent, diamond, or circle may become part of the journey's official history. Your ticket now carries a small wound of bureaucracy. The guard examines the gentleman's ticket, then the woman's, then the parcel owner's. He nods, closes the door, and moves onward. Cold air remains behind him. The train starts again. You hold your ticket near the lamp and inspect the new hole. It seems insignificant. Yet without this card you might be removed from the compartment, charged an additional fare, or questioned about your intentions. Railway travel depends upon paper. Tickets prove payment. Timetables organise movement. Notices announce rules. Labels direct luggage. Ledgers record goods. Telegraph forms carry messages. Even the roaring locomotive is surrounded by ink. Some historians question whether railway time disciplined Victorian society, or merely gave visible form to habits already developing through factories, offices, schools, and urban commerce. The railway certainly does not invent punctuality, but it makes punctuality public. A station clock hangs above everyone. A missed train cannot be persuaded that your household clock runs slowly. The gentleman snaps his watch shut. The sound is crisp in the quiet compartment. Outside, another station clock appears through the snow. Its face glows above a platform almost empty except for one porter and a stack of milk cans. The hands show several minutes past the printed arrival time. The gentleman compares it with his watch. His mouth tightens. The station clock and his watch disagree by less than a minute. This is apparently enough to trouble him. Imagine the older world of local clocks. When noon shifts gradually from town to town, Travellers adjust by looking at the sun, asking an innkeeper, or simply arriving when the road permits. Now the railway promises precision. The promise is powerful, even when reality is covered in snow. The woman refolds her timetable along its worn creases and returns it to her bag. The parcel owner studies the punched hole in his own ticket before placing it carefully inside his coat. You do the same. The card rests close to your chest, proof that you belong in this moving compartment at this exact hour. Travelling towards a destination assigned a printed time, beyond the window. Telegraph poles pass at regular intervals, each appearing and vanishing like the marks of an invisible clock. The wheels count the distance, the watch counts the seconds, the timetable waits to judge the arrival, and beneath the soft hiss of the lamp, you feel the night itself being divided into orderly Victorian minutes. The gentleman's watch disappears into his waistcoat, but its measured ticking seems to remain in the compartment. You hear it between the heavier sounds of the railway, a tiny private rhythm beneath the clatter of wheels, the groan of timber, and the low breathing of passengers beginning to grow tired. The night has deepened. Beyond the window, snow continues to fall, though you can no longer judge how thickly. The glass reflects the interior more clearly than the landscape. Your own face floats in the darkness beside the woman's bonnet and the pale oval of the overhead lamp. You shift against the velvet seat. The first position feels comfortable for perhaps 30 seconds. Then your shoulder begins to ache. You lean toward the window, but the glass is cold enough to sting through your hair. You straighten again. You try resting your head against the padded wall, only to discover that the padding ends precisely where your skull needs it most. Victorian railway seats are not designed for sleeping in the modern sense. Compartments offer benches rather than beds, and even first-class passengers usually spend ordinary journeys sitting upright. Dedicated sleeping cars appear on certain longer routes during the 19th century, developing first in the United States and later becoming more familiar on European railways. For many travellers, however, overnight rest means improvisation. You may fold a coat beneath your head. You may support your neck with a scarf. You may lean against a stranger and spend the rest of your life pretending it did not happen. The man beside you has chosen a direct method. He crosses his arms, lowers his chin, and closes his eyes. His parcel rests securely between his boots. Each time the carriage sways, his head dips farther forward, then rises suddenly as his body catches itself. He repeats this several times. It resembles a slow argument between sleep and dignity. The woman opposite remains awake, though her eyelids are heavier. She's placed the leather bag between herself and the sidewall, creating a small support beneath one elbow. The gentleman sits in his corner with his arms folded and his hat tilted slightly downward. Nobody speaks. Railway etiquette becomes especially delicate when passengers attempt to sleep in a shared compartment. Every movement affects others. Stretching your legs may invade someone else's space. Opening the window may freeze the person beside you. Closing it may trap smoke, breath, food smells, and the warm memory of onions. You decide to keep your feet close together. The train gives a sudden jerk. The man beside you wakes with a small snort, his eyes open. He looks around as though someone else has made the sound. No one acknowledges it. This kindness is essential to civilization. A small, practical curiosity of Victorian travel is the use of inflatable neck cushions and portable air pillows. Some are made from rubberized fabric and can be carried flat before being inflated for use. Advertisements promise comfort, support, and relief during journeys. You imagine producing one now. The gentleman might regard it as scientific progress. The woman might quietly envy it. The man beside you might mistake it for emergency flotation equipment. You have no such cushion, so you fold your scarf and place it between your head and the wall. It helps, though only in the way that a single biscuit helps with hunger. Your eyes begin to close. The carriage sound changes as you drift. Individual knocks blend into a continuous rolling murmur. The whistle in the distance seems softer. The lamp's flicker becomes slower, as though the flame is also growing sleepy. Then the wheel strikes a rough joint. Your head taps the wall. You open your eyes. The gentleman's hat has slipped low over his face. The woman's hands remain folded on her bag, but her breathing has deepened. The man beside you has tilted slightly in your direction. You adjust your posture before gravity makes a decision for both of you. Long-distance railway travel creates new questions about privacy and acceptable behaviour. Can a gentleman remove his boots? Should a woman sleep in the presence of unfamiliar men? Is it rude to snore? Is it worse to wake a snoring passenger or endure the noise until sunrise? Observers of Victorian manners do not always agree on whether railway compartments relax social rules or made travellers more anxious about them. Sleep removes control. A sleeping face may reveal exhaustion, vulnerability, or an unfortunately open mouth. Respectable passengers therefore try to rest without appearing too deeply unconscious. This is not easy. You close your eyes again and listen to the compartment. Cloth rustles. A boot slides across the floor. Someone swallows. The lamp emits a faint hiss. Underneath it all, the train continues its relentless pattern over the rails. You begin to count the beats. 1, 2, 1, 2. The numbers dissolve. For a while, you drift somewhere between sleep and wakefulness. You sense motion without measuring it. The carriage feels like a cradle built by an engineer who's never met a baby. Your body loosens, your chin lowers, a distant whistle enters your dream. Then your knee touches the gentleman's boot. You wake instantly, he does not move. You draw your leg back with great care. The train curves. Everyone leans slightly toward one side. The woman's bonnet brushes the wall. The man beside you finally loses his battle with gravity and rests against your shoulder. He is heavier than expected. You remain still. Perhaps he will wake. He does not. You consider shifting him gently, but the movement might wake the entire compartment. You also remember the scarf he used earlier to block the draft. This creates a minor moral obligation, so you allow him to remain. His coat smells of cold air, wool, bread, and onions. Sleep requires sacrifice. A popular travel accessory among wealthier Victorians is the railway rug, a thick woolen blanket carried specifically for journeys. Some are patterned, some plain, and many can be rolled and strapped like luggage. A good rug helps shield knees and feet from drafts while also serving as a cushion. The woman has one folded beneath her cloak. She draws it slowly across her lap without opening her eyes. The gentleman appears to have no rug, perhaps because he believes punctuality itself generates warmth. You tuck your hands beneath your arms. The air has cooled again. Condensation beads on the window and slips downward in narrow trails. Outside, nothing is visible except occasional white flashes where snow catches light from the train. You wonder how far you've travelled. The printed timetable could tell you, but reaching for it would disturb the man resting against you. Time has become less important now. The compartment is its own world. Moving through darkness without landmarks, your eyelids lower. The railway sounds soften once more. A coupling knocks far ahead. The carriage answers with a gentle pull. The man on your shoulder murmurs something about a platform, then falls silent. The woman's head leans against the wall. The gentleman's watch ticks inside his coat, still alert even if its owner is not. You let the rhythm carry you. The seat remains firm. The draught remains cold. Your neck is already preparing tomorrow's complaint. Yet fatigue smooths the discomforts one by one. The wheels repeat their quiet command. Rest now. Move onward. Rest now. Move onward. And while the snow falls unseen beyond the darkened glass, You finally begin to sleep upright with the other passengers, swaying together through the Victorian night. Sleep comes in fragments, each one carried away by the movement of the train. You drift for several minutes, wake when the carriage jolts, then drift again. The man resting against your shoulder shifts his weight but does not lift his head. Across from you, the woman remains folded beneath her travelling rug. While the gentleman's hat still casts a shadow over his face, the compartment appears peaceful. Beneath that peace, fire travels only a few carriages ahead. The locomotive burns coal at a fierce temperature. Sparks rise from its chimney and sweep backward over the train. Most vanish harmlessly into the snow, but dry timber, painted panels, upholstery, luggage, and oil lamps provide plenty of material that can burn. Victorian railway carriages are warm little rooms built largely from wood and pulled behind a furnace. You would probably prefer not to think about that. Naturally, your sleepy mind chooses this exact moment to think about nothing else. A faint smell of smoke reaches you. You open your eyes fully. It is not the rich smell of food, nor the stale trace of tobacco carried from the platform. This is sharper, dry, slightly bitter. You lift your head. The man beside you wakes and straightens, blinking with the wounded expression of someone unfairly returned to consciousness. The woman opens her eyes. The gentleman raises his hat. For several seconds, everyone listens. The wheels continue their rhythm. The lamp burns steadily. No alarm sounds from the guard. The smoke may simply have entered through a ventilation gap. Coal smoke frequently reaches passengers, especially when windows are opened or the wind pushes exhaust along the train. Still, the gentleman leans forward and examines the lamp. Oil lamps are valuable but imperfect companions. A poorly maintained lamp may smoke, leak, or extinguish itself. Gaslighting, introduced on some railways later in the century, offers a brighter glow but creates its own dangers when pipes or storage systems fail. The gentleman studies the flame. It behaves normally. He sits back. Nobody says they were worried. Victorian passengers become familiar with danger through experience, newspaper reports, and public discussion. Railway accidents are widely reported, partly because trains remain symbols of modern progress. When such a powerful invention fails, the story attracts attention. The railway network expands rapidly during the 19th century. Safety rules, signalling methods, braking systems, track standards, and carriage construction develop over time, often after weaknesses become painfully clear. Early trains do not always have continuous brakes controlled from the locomotive. Braking may depend upon the driver reversing or slowing the engine, while guards apply hand brakes in separate vans. Instructions may pass through whistle signals or chords. This means several people must understand the situation and react correctly. Snow complicates everything. Ice reduces the grip between wheels and rails. Frozen brake equipment may respond poorly. Snow can hide signals, block points, or collect in cuttings. A driver who sees danger ahead may have less control than a modern traveller expects. You feel the carriage begin to descend. The wheels grow louder. The train picks up speed. Your body presses gently into the seat as the line slopes downward through the darkness. The passengers exchange brief glances. The gentleman checks his watch. Though time offers little comfort when gravity becomes enthusiastic. A long whistle sounds from the engine, then another. The woman grips her leather bag. The parcel owner places one boot firmly against his wrapped food. The train continues downhill. Railway workers use whistle codes to communicate different warnings, though patterns vary between companies and periods. A whistle might announce departure, warn people near the line, request braking, or signal concern ahead to passengers. However, every unexpected whistle carries the same basic message. Something important is happening where you cannot see it. The carriage begins to vibrate more strongly. Snow flashes beyond the window. Telegraph poles pass too quickly to count. The lamp swings in a wider arc above you. You imagine the guard in his van reaching for the brake wheel. You picture the driver closing the regulator, adjusting the controls, and watching the track ahead through blowing snow. Railway historians remain divided over whether Victorian travellers accepted danger as an ordinary cost of progress, or worried about it far more deeply than popular images suggest. Some passengers write confidently about speed and convenience. Others describe fear when trains cross bridges, enter tunnels, or descend steep gradients. You understand both reactions. The motion is thrilling. It is also entirely beyond your control. A heavy pull moves through the couplings. The carriage jerks backward, then forward. The luggage rack groans overhead. The hatbox slides several inches. Everyone looks up. It stops at the edge of the netting. For one impressive moment, a small piece of fashionable luggage becomes the most threatening object in the compartment. The gentleman rises enough to push it back into place. His dignity is challenged by the moving floor, and he grips the brass fitting beside the window. The train slows. The noise of the wheels changes from a rapid rush to a deeper, more controlled beat. A collective breath leaves the compartment. The parcel owner pretends to adjust his scarf. The woman smooths the travelling rug. You return your hands to your lap. Another risk comes from the couplings between carriages. If a coupling breaks, part of the train may separate. Guards and railway workers are trained to respond, but darkness and gradients can turn separation into serious danger. Some trains carry chains as an additional safeguard. These safety chains may keep carriages connected if the main coupling fails, though they are not perfect. A peculiar safety device appears in the form of communication cords or alarm systems intended to let passengers alert railway staff. On some trains, pulling a cord may ring a bell, affect a signal, or attract the guard's attention. The problem is that passengers do not always know when to use it. They may also pull it for reasons ranging from genuine danger to lost hats, missed stations, or sudden emotional disagreement with the timetable. Human beings remain human beings, even near emergency equipment. The train reaches flatter ground. Its speed steadies. The smell of smoke fades. Outside, a signal lamp glows green through the storm. It passes the window and vanishes behind you. The woman loosens her grip on the bag. The gentleman settles his coat and checks the hatbox one final time. The man beside you leans back, though he does not immediately return to sleep. You become aware of another danger hidden in the compartment itself. The door. It opens directly onto the outside. A faulty latch or careless movement can expose a passenger to the rushing air beyond. Newspapers occasionally report people falling from trains. Though the circumstances are not always clear, some may involve accidents, confusion, crime, or doors opened at the wrong moment. You glance at the handle. It remains firmly in place. You decide not to touch it. The warmth of the compartment returns gradually. The lamp seems softer now. The wooden walls creak with familiar sounds rather than threatening ones. Danger has not disappeared. It has simply moved back beneath the surface. That is how the railway carries you. Comfort and risk sit side by side, divided by polished brass, painted timber, careful rules, and the judgment of people working beyond your view. You close your eyes again. The locomotive pulls steadily through the snow. Sparks rise into the darkness. Brakes wait beneath the train. Signals stand ahead in the storm and inside the fragile warmth. You listen to the wheels with a little more respect than before. The wheels settle into their calmer rhythm, and the compartment gradually releases the tension left by the descent. The gentleman adjusts his cuffs. The man beside you lowers his chin again. Across from you, the woman keeps her eyes open. She does not appear frightened. She appears attentive. There is a difference. Her leather bag remains beneath both hands, the travelling rug covers her knees, but her posture is upright, ready to respond if the door opens or the train stops unexpectedly, while the men around her begin to surrender to sleep. She continues watching the reflections in the window. You begin to notice how carefully she occupies the space. She avoids stretching her feet too far forward. Her cloak remains fastened at the throat. Her bonnet stays tied even though the ribbons must be uncomfortable. She keeps her belongings close enough to protect without looking possessive. Every movement balances comfort against respectability. For a Victorian woman travelling at night, a railway carriage can offer freedom that earlier forms of transport rarely provide. Trains allow women to visit relatives, seek employment, reach seaside towns, attend schools, manage family duties, and travel without spending days in a jolting coach. Yet freedom does not remove scrutiny. A woman travelling alone may be judged by where she goes, whom she speaks to, how she dresses, and whether she appears sufficiently cautious. Society celebrates female modesty while placing women in situations where modesty is difficult to preserve. A compartment shared with strangers is one such situation. The woman glances toward the door as the train passes another signal. Light sweeps briefly across her face. You see tiredness there, but also calculation. She may have chosen this compartment because it contained other respectable passengers. She may have thus avoided one occupied only by men. Perhaps a porter helped her select it at the station. Perhaps someone advised her to sit near an older gentleman, a married couple, or another woman. Advice manuals and newspapers often offer guidance for female travellers. Women are encouraged to plan routes carefully. Keep tickets ready. Avoid unnecessary conversation. Guard their luggage, and seek assistance from railway staff when uncertain. Such advice sounds practical. It also places the burden of safety almost entirely upon the traveller. A common feature of Victorian rail travel is the introduction of compartments reserved for women on some services. These may be marked for ladies only, giving female passengers an alternative to mixed company. Their availability varies, and they do not always solve every problem. A reserved compartment may be distant from the guard, poorly heated, or already crowded. Still, the idea reflects growing recognition that women travel independently and require some measure of privacy. The woman opposite may have had the option of such a carriage earlier in the evening. Perhaps it was full. Perhaps she preferred this one. Perhaps there was no choice at all. The man beside you stirs and opens his eyes. He realizes that his shoulder has begun drifting in your direction again and straightens quickly. Across the compartment, the woman lowers her gaze to her bag. Sleep carries different risks for her. If she closes her eyes deeply, she cannot monitor the door, her belongings, or the behavior of the strangers nearby. If she remains awake all night, exhaustion may make the next stage of her journey harder. Respectability demands composure. Safety demands awareness. The body demands rest. Victorian society is not famous for allowing these demands to cooperate. A curious item sold to some women travellers is a concealed pocket or small security pouch worn beneath layers of clothing. Money, keys, tickets, and important papers can be stored where a thief may find them difficult to reach. Fashion already requires enough fabric to upholster a modest parlour. Now some of it also functions as a safe. The woman shifts her bag slightly and checks its clasp with one thumb. The movement is so small that the gentleman, whose eyes remain closed, does not notice. You do, beyond concerns about theft. Women also face the danger of harassment or unwanted attention. Compartments without corridors can leave passengers isolated between stations. A woman who feels threatened may have limited ways to seek help while the train is moving. Railway companies experiment with communication cords, better lighting, reserved spaces, and staffed patrols. But protection remains inconsistent. Public anxiety grows whenever newspapers report an attack or disappearance connected with railway travel. Such stories often receive dramatic treatment, combining genuine concern with fascination and moral panic. Commentators continue to disagree about whether the railway made women more vulnerable by placing them among strangers, or more independent by allowing them to move beyond the supervision of family and local communities. Both outcomes can exist together. Mobility expands opportunity, but it also creates unfamiliar risks. You look at the woman again. Her journey may be ordinary. Perhaps she's returning from caring for a sister. Perhaps she teaches at a school in another town. Perhaps she's been visiting a doctor, attending a funeral, interviewing for work, or travelling to meet a husband whose business requires frequent movement. Or perhaps she simply wishes to go somewhere. That possibility is often the most quietly radical. The train enters a tunnel. Darkness closes round the carriage, and the sound of the wheels becomes enormous. Smoke presses near the windows. The lamp glows brighter against the black glass. The woman's hands tighten around the bag. The tunnel amplifies every noise. Timber groans, metal strikes metal. The locomotive's exhaust beats against the walls like distant thunder. You can see no snow now, only reflections, your own face, the gentleman's lowered hat, the parcel owner's tired eyes, the woman watching all three of you in the darkened glass. The tunnel continues longer than expected. You feel the enclosed air grow warmer and dirtier. Fine smoke enters through gaps in the frame. The woman raises a handkerchief to her mouth, at last. The train bursts back into the snowy night. White flakes flash against the window. Everyone breathes more easily. The woman lowers the handkerchief and notices that soot has marked its edge. She folds the stained portion inward with practiced care. Her control is impressive, though perhaps control is simply what the world expects from her. The gentleman wakes fully and asks whether she requires the window opened. She thanks him but declines. Cold air would solve the smoke by replacing it with winter. He nods, apparently satisfied that courtesy has been offered and refused correctly. A station approaches in the distance. Several lamps appear through the snow, small at first, then steadily brighter. The woman reaches into her bag and removes a ticket. This may be her stop. She checks the timetable, then looks once more at the station lights. Her movements become more deliberate. She fastens the bag, folds the rug, and adjusts the cloak around her shoulders. You rise slightly to help retrieve her case from the rack. She thanks you and places it beside her boots. The train begins to slow. For the first time, the gentleman offers more than a remark about weather or schedules. He asks whether someone is meeting her. She says yes. The answer comes without hesitation. Perhaps it is true. Perhaps it is the safest answer. A small silver whistle hangs from a cord near the edge of her bag. Personal whistles are sometimes carried to attract attention in an emergency. It is an unusual but sensible precaution, though using one inside the compartment would certainly wake everyone and possibly the cheese. The platform draws closer. A porter waits beneath a lamp. The woman watches him carefully until the train stops. When the door opens, cold air and snow enter together. You hand down her case. She steps onto the platform with one gloved hand on the rail. A figure approaches from the waiting room, wrapped in a long coat. Only then does her posture soften. She turns back and offers a brief good night. The door closes, through the misted glass. You see her walk beneath the station lamps beside the waiting figure, her case carried by the porter and her leather bag still held close. Then the train moves forward. Her empty seat remains opposite you, the velvet slightly compressed, the forgotten warmth fading as snow falls beyond the window. The empty seat opposite you keeps the shape of the woman for a little while, a shallow hollow in the velvet where her weight has been. Then the fabric slowly rises, and the compartment seems larger, colder and strangely less alert without her watchful presence. The gentleman looks once toward the vacant place, then turns his attention back to the window. The man beside you shifts the parcel between his boots and closes his eyes again, outside. The station lamps shrink into the snowy distance. One remains visible longer than the others, glowing at the edge of the platform like a small amber star. Beside it stands a tall telegraph pole, its wires stretching away into darkness. More poles appear as the train gathers speed. They pass in measured succession, each one leaning briefly into view before vanishing behind you. The wires rise and fall between them in long black curves. Snow gathers along their upper surfaces, though the wind shakes much of it loose. You cannot hear the messages moving through those wires. That is part of their mystery. The railway carries people, luggage, animals, newspapers, food, and coal. The telegraph carries information without any visible cargo at all. A signal travels as an electrical pulse, racing along wire from one station to another far faster than your locomotive can move. By the Victorian period, railway companies rely heavily upon telegraph systems to coordinate traffic. Station staff send notices about departures, delays, accidents, weather, and the movement of trains. A message can reach the next important junction before the engine itself arrives. To you, surrounded by steam and rattling wood. This feels almost magical. A clerk taps a key in one station. A sounder clicks in another. Between them, snow falls over miles of empty track. The gentleman opposite follows the passing wires with his eyes. Perhaps he understands their purpose. Perhaps he owns shares in a company that manufactures cable. Perhaps he's simply grateful that someone ahead may already know the train is running late. Railway telegraphy becomes closely connected with safer train operation if a train is delayed in one section. Staff farther along the line can be warned. Signals can be held against another service. Instructions can pass from station to station with a speed impossible through messengers on horseback. This does not make the system perfect. Wires break, batteries weaken, instruments fail, storms damage poles, messages are misunderstood or written incorrectly. Modern technology, as usual, arrives carrying both confidence and paperwork. The train passes a small line-side hut. Light shines through one square window, inside. A telegraph operator may be sitting before a wooden instrument, listening to patterns of clicks. Some systems use needles that point toward letters. Others use coded signals. Morse code becomes famous, but railway companies may employ their own arrangements, abbreviations, and bell signals. A trained operator hears meaning where you would hear only mechanical tapping. The skill requires concentration. A missed signal might delay a train or confuse a station. Long hours produce fatigue, especially at night when the room is warm, the work repetitive, and the snow outside makes the whole world seem asleep. You imagine the operator drinking strong tea beside a small stove, waiting for the instrument to speak. Then it does. A bell rings, a needle moves. The railway announces itself from somewhere unseen. One curious habit develops around telegraph messages sent for passengers at larger stations. Urgent telegrams may be waiting when a traveller arrives. A porter or clerk calls a name along the platform, holding a folded message that may contain news of business, illness, birth, death, delay, or sudden change of plans. The message is brief because each word costs money. Victorian families therefore learned to compress emotion into very little space. Arrive tomorrow. Stop all well. Stop. The word stop may be written to mark punctuation, creating messages that sound oddly firm even when affectionate. You picture a declaration of love delivered with the tone of a railway instruction. The wires beside the track continue their silent conversation. The gentleman removes his watch but does not open it. He turns the silver case in his fingers, perhaps thinking of someone waiting at the junction. If the train falls behind schedule, a telegraph message may travel ahead, explaining the delay before he arrives. This changes expectation itself. Before rapid communication, absence creates uncertainty. A delayed coach may simply appear hours later, and those waiting have little choice but to continue waiting with the telegraph. News can arrive first. The traveller is late. The message is not. Researchers remain divided over whether the telegraph made Victorian life feel more connected or merely introduced a new pressure for immediate response. It reduces distance, but it also allows employers, relatives, officials, and clients to reach people who might once have been safely unavailable. You recognize the problem. Every age invents a faster way to send messages, then wonders why nobody feels rested. The railway and telegraph grow together because each strengthens the other. Trains carry equipment, workers, mail, and replacement parts along the line. Telegraph messages organize the movement of those trains. Poles often stand beside the tracks because railway companies already control the route and can maintain the wires more easily there. You watch the cables dip between two poles. A clump of snow slides from one wire and falls into the darkness. For a moment, the line quivers. Messages continue despite the cold. The compartment passes close to another signal box, larger than the one you saw earlier. Several windows glow above the rails. Inside, a signalman works beside rows of levers, bells, and telegraph instruments. A bell code can announce that a train is approaching. Another confirms that it has entered a section. A further signal indicates that it has passed safely and the line is clear. These simple messages form a conversation between signal boxes. The words are not spoken, the railway says. Train coming. The next box replies, understood. Later it says, train passed. The first answers by allowing another movement. Your carriage exists inside this invisible exchange. You do not see the operator's hand or hear the bell that announces your approach. Yet each signal cleared ahead of you depends upon information travelling from the places you have already left. The man beside you wakes as the locomotive whistles. He looks through the window at the telegraph poles and remarks that news now moves quicker than people. The gentleman replies that this is usually for the best. You're not entirely convinced. News can carry comfort. It can also carry worry faster. A telegram delivered at midnight rarely begins with a discussion of pleasant weather. Still, there is reassurance in knowing the line ahead is not blind. Someone may already know about the snow, the delay, and the train moving through the darkness. The engine whistle sounds again. Far ahead, a station may be receiving notice of your approach at this very moment. An operator hears the bell. A clerk checks the clock. A porter lifts his lamp. Perhaps a refreshment room begins warming fresh tea. That may be the most comforting use of advanced communication yet discovered. The poles continue beside you, regular and patient. Their wires gleam faintly when moonlight touches the snow. The train carries your body through the night. The telegraph carries your presence ahead, and while the compartment sways beneath its quiet lamp, unseen messages race through the storm, station to station, faster than steam, faster than sleep, faster than the falling snow. The telegraph poles continue beside the line until their rhythm begins to merge with the motion of the carriage. Each dark post appears, leans across the window for an instant, and slips away behind you. Then the train slows once more, not with the firm braking of a busy junction, but with a gradual hesitation, as though the locomotive itself is uncertain whether this tiny place deserves a stop. The gentleman raises his head. The man beside you opens one eye. Outside, there is no broad roof, no bright refreshment room, and no crowd of porters waiting beneath a clock. Instead, A single platform emerges from the snow, narrow and low, bordered by a wooden fence that leans toward the track. A lamp burns near the station building, another hangs beside a gate. Together they illuminate very little. The station name appears on a board half covered in snow. You lean closer to the glass, but the letters pass through steam before you can read them. Perhaps the place consists of a village, a church, an inn, and several farms. Perhaps the station stands a mile from all of them because the railway company chose the cheapest strip of land available. That would be thoroughly practical. It would also leave every passenger with a long walk. The train enters the halt with a soft squeal from the brakes. Snow crunches beneath the wheels. The locomotive breathes heavily at the front, sending clouds of steam across the platform until the little station disappears and returns in pieces. A porter waits beside a handcart. He appears to be the only porter. He may also be the booking clerk, parcel handler, lamp keeper, gate attendant, and unofficial authority on missing chickens. Small rural stations often operate with very few employees. By the later 19th century, the railway reaches deep into the countryside, linking villages and market towns with larger commercial centres. Milk, eggs, livestock, newspapers, letters, tools, and passengers all move through modest platforms like this one. The station may look sleepy. Its influence is not. A farmer can send produce farther before it spoils. A shopkeeper can receive goods more quickly. A local family can reach a distant town without hiring a coach for the entire journey. Young people can leave in search of work. Visitors can arrive from places that once felt impossibly remote. The railway brings opportunity. It also makes departure much easier. The train stops with a final nudge. The compartment door remains closed, but you can hear activity outside. Boots stamp on the platform. A cartwheel squeaks. Someone calls to the guard. Another voice answers from farther down the train. You wipe condensation from the glass. A stack of wicker baskets stands near the station wall. One basket moves. You look again. A goose pushes its head between the woven strips and stares at the train with deep suspicion. Another basket contains chickens, judging by the feathers poking through the lid. Nearby, 2 milk cans stand upright in the snow, their metal sides reflecting the station lamp. Rural railway traffic often includes live animals, poultry, dogs, pigs, sheep, and even cattle may travel by train. Though not usually in the passenger compartment, special vans, crates, baskets, and livestock wagons help carry them. The animals do not always appreciate modern transport. Neither, to be fair, do some people. A peculiar feature of countryside stations is the variety of objects treated as ordinary luggage. Railway staff may handle beehives, fishing rods, sacks of potatoes, boxed rabbits, bundles of plants, and parcels that produce unexplained noises. The man beside you watches the goose watches him. There is a moment of mutual recognition between two travellers carrying strong-smelling food. The station door opens, and warm light falls across the platform. A woman emerges wearing a shawl over her head. She carries a covered basket in one hand and holds a small boy by the other. The child looks toward the train with wide eyes. Perhaps he has never travelled at night. Perhaps he has never travelled at all. The porter takes the basket and lifts it into a luggage van. The woman bends to say something to the boy. He nods solemnly, though his attention remains fixed on the locomotive. Steam rushes past them. The child disappears completely inside the cloud. When it clears, he's still standing there, now grinning. You remember how extraordinary the railway can appear to someone seeing it closely for the first time. The engine is larger than a cottage room, hotter than a kitchen range, and louder than anything that belongs in a quiet village. For residents accustomed to carts, bells, animals, and wind through trees, The arrival of a train transforms the entire atmosphere for several minutes. The platform vibrates, windows glow, doors open, strangers appear. Then the machine departs and leaves silence behind. Social historians remain uncertain about whether rural communities experienced the railway mainly as liberation from isolation or as an intrusion that weakened older local customs. Better transport connects villages to national markets and ideas. It also draws money, labour, and attention toward larger towns. The same track that brings goods inward carries people outward. The woman and child approach a third-class carriage farther back. A railway employee helps them climb aboard. The boy turns at the step and looks once more toward the station building. An older man stands in the doorway beneath a lamp. He raises one hand. The boy raises his own. No one waves dramatically. The farewell is small, restrained, and therefore more affecting. You look away to give them privacy, though they cannot see you through the misted glass. At the far end of the platform, a horse waits beside a cart. Snow has gathered along its back. The animal lowers its head while a man secures a trunk beneath a canvas sheet. The train delivers passengers only part of the way. From rural stations, journeys continue on foot, by hired carriage, by farm cart, or on horseback. A traveller arriving after midnight may still face several cold miles along an unlit road. The gentleman opposite watches the cart and remarks that someone has an unpleasant drive ahead. The parcel owner says the horse appears to know it. The horse does indeed look disappointed with the entire century. A station cat emerges from beneath a bench. It steps delicately through the snow, pauses near the waiting room door, and examines the train without enthusiasm. Station cats become familiar residents at many railway buildings, valued for controlling mice around parcels, grain, and food stores. Some earn reputations among staff and passengers. A few are even said to recognise particular trains and appear when regular deliveries include fish or cream. This cat appears to recognise only the cold. It turns round and returns beneath the bench. A porter rolls the milk cans toward the luggage van. Their metal bases scrape across the platform. The sound carries clearly through the quiet night. Another worker hands a bundle of newspapers down from the train. By morning, those papers will reach village homes, inns, shops, and reading rooms, carrying political speeches, advertisements, crime reports, market prices, and distant scandals into a place that currently seems removed from the whole world. The countryside may sleep beneath snow. Information still arrives before breakfast. A bell rings beside the station office. The porter closes the luggage van. The woman and child are safely aboard. The goose basket has been moved closer to the wall, though the goose continues to object in low, irritated murmurs. The guard raises his lamp. The whistle sounds. Steam rolls along the platform once again, briefly hiding the older man in the doorway. The train pulls forward. The little station begins to slide past your window. You see the fence, the milk cans, the waiting horse, the lamp above the gate. Then the older man reappears through the steam, still standing where the child left him. The platform ends. Snow closes around the train, behind you. The rural halt returns to silence, holding its baskets, parcels, animals, and fading lamp while your carriage moves onward into the deeper night. The rural platform disappears, and the train resumes its long movement through open country for several minutes. You see only snow and the occasional dark line of a hedge. Then the track curves, allowing you a brief view along the length of the train. Window after window glows behind the locomotive. Your own carriage is only one small chamber among many. Some windows shine softly through polished glass. Others show crowded benches, restless silhouettes, and faces pressed near the panes. The differences are visible even from here. Victorian railways divide passengers into classes, usually first, second, and third, The ticket determines more than price. It shapes the seat beneath you, the space around your knees, the amount of shelter from wind, and sometimes whether there is any roof at all. In the earliest years of railway travel, third-class accommodation can be extremely basic. Some passengers ride in open carriages with high sides, exposed to smoke, rain, sparks, and cold. These vehicles resemble goods wagons more than rooms intended for human comfort. Snow falling beyond the window is picturesque when you're seated on velvet. It becomes a personal attack when there is no proper window. The passenger beside you notices the other carriages too. He leans toward the glass, following their lights as the curve continues. His repaired sleeve brushes your coat. Perhaps he has travelled third class before. Many people do, even when they can occasionally afford something better. Railway fares consume a meaningful portion of ordinary wages, especially when the journey is long or a whole family must travel. Your first-class ticket buys a wider bench, softer upholstery, and fewer companions. It also purchases distance from those who carry baskets, bundles, work tools, crying children, and the smells of daily labour. Distance is one of luxury's favourite products. The gentleman opposite glances along the train, then closes the curtain halfway. The movement may be practical. Snow glare can tire the eyes. It may also be instinctive. A small act of separation between this compartment and the crowded ones behind. By the middle of the 19th century, Parliament requires railway companies to provide at least one affordable service each day under regulated conditions. These services become known as parliamentary trains. The law aims to make rail travel available to poorer passengers, offering a minimum standard of enclosed accommodation and a controlled fare. The journey is not necessarily convenient. A cheap train may leave at an unpleasant hour, stop frequently, and move slowly. Equality arrives, but it arrives before dawn and waits at every station. You imagine the third-class compartments farther back. Wooden benches run across the carriage. Passengers sit close together, knees nearly touching. A labourer carries a wrapped bundle of clothes. A mother steadies a sleeping child. A young servant keeps a box on her lap. Their carriage may be enclosed, but warmth is scarce. There may be no padding, no rug, and no foot warmer. Drafts move freely through gaps in the boards. The floor is hard. The air is crowded with damp coats and tired breath. Yet people may talk more readily there. First-class silence protects dignity. Third-class conversation helps pass the miles. Travellers exchange news about wages, employers, harvests, rents, relatives, and places where work might be found. Someone knows a factory hiring women. Someone else has heard that a cousin needs help in a shop. A soldier tells a story. A child asks the same question about a rival 6 times. The carriage becomes a moving room of practical information. One unusual detail of class travel is that railway companies sometimes remove or replace carriage fittings according to the expected passengers. Cushions may appear for one service and vanish for another. A vehicle can be respectable at noon and brutally plain by evening, as though comfort itself has purchased a ticket elsewhere. The man beside you shifts in his seat. He remarks that the railway charges well for a little cloth and stuffing. The gentleman answers that one also pays for quiet. At that exact moment, a muffled snore comes from him. His eyes open. The parcel owner looks toward the window. You study your gloves with great concentration. Quiet, like punctuality, is often more admired than achieved. Beyond comfort, class affects how railway staff treat passengers. First-class travellers expect help with luggage, clearer information, and access to waiting rooms furnished with chairs, carpets, and fires. Third-class passengers may wait in bare rooms or on exposed platforms. Large stations sometimes maintain separate waiting spaces for different ticket holders. Even refreshment facilities reflect the same divisions. One passenger drinks tea from China, another eats bread beside a luggage cart. Specialists remain divided over whether railway travel weakens class boundaries by placing different groups within one system, or strengthens them by turning inequality into a visible sequence of doors, compartments, and fares. The train makes both arguments at once. Everyone leaves from the same station. Not everyone waits in the same room. Everyone hears the same whistle. Not everyone sits on the same seat. Everyone travels beneath the same snow. Not everyone is protected from it. The line straightens, and your view along the train disappears. You see only your reflection again. Softened by condensation, the velvet beneath you suddenly feels more noticeable. Its comfort is no longer neutral. It exists because the railway has calculated what different passengers can pay, and what discomfort they will tolerate. Second class occupies an uncertain place between luxury and hardship. Its compartments may have enclosed sides and decent seats, but less padding, poorer lighting, and fewer conveniences. It attracts clerks, shopkeepers, skilled workers, governesses, commercial travellers, and families balancing respectability against expense. Many choose second class not merely because of cost, but because appearance matters. A person may fear being judged for travelling third. Another may consider first class wasteful. Thus a ticket becomes a social statement printed on cardboard. The class you enter may hint at the income you earn, the work you perform, or the identity you wish strangers to believe. The parcel owner looks at ease in your compartment, though his repaired coat and sturdy hands may invite assumptions. Perhaps he saved for this ticket because he carries something valuable. Perhaps an employer paid. Perhaps he has decided that one winter night deserves velvet. You remember how quickly everyone built silent stories from clothing and luggage. The railway encourages such guesses, then complicates them. A wealthy passenger may dress plainly. A servant may carry a fine case belonging to someone else. A young gentleman may own an expensive coat and little money. Class is visible, except when it is not. At the next station, the train slows beside another service waiting on an adjacent track. Its third-class carriage stands close enough for you to see inside. The benches are crowded. A boy sleeps against a basket. A woman holds a baby beneath her shawl. Two men share a newspaper under a weak lamp. Frost clouds the lower corners of the glass. One passenger looks directly toward you. For a second, your eyes meet across the narrow gap between trains. There is no hostility in his expression, only tired curiosity. Then steam rises between the carriages and hides him. Your train moves first. The other service remains beside the platform, its passengers waiting beneath dimmer light. Their destination may be the same as yours, but their journey will take longer. The gentleman pulls the curtain fully closed. The compartment becomes warmer and more private. You hear the wheels gather speed again, carrying padded seats, wooden benches, rugs, baskets, silver watches, and tired bodies through the same frozen landscape. The railway promises movement to nearly everyone. Comfort, however, remains carefully priced. The closed curtain holds the outside world away for several minutes inside the compartment. Warmth gathers faintly around tired bodies, folded coats, and the weakening foot warmer beneath your boots. The gentleman rests his head against the corner. The parcel owner folds his arms. The lamp continues its soft hiss above you. Yet privacy soon becomes duller than curiosity. You reach toward the curtain and draw it back a few inches. Cold light seeps through the gap. The snow has thinned enough for the landscape to return, first as uncertain shadows, then as fields, fences, and low buildings sliding past beneath the night sky. Your reflection remains on the glass, but now it floats over a country being remade by rails, factories, and restless towns. You're no longer travelling only through rural darkness. A chimney rises beyond the fields, then another. Their outlines stand black against the snow, taller than church towers and wider than the trees around them. Smoke pours from their tops, drifting low beneath the clouds. The falling flakes vanish into it, turning grey before they reach the roofs below. The train approaches an industrial town. Rows of brick houses appear beside the line, packed closely together. Their small windows glow with candlelight. Oil lamps, or gas. Narrow yards lie under snow. Washing lines hang empty between walls. A dog moves through an alley, pausing as the locomotive passes, farther ahead. A factory stretches along the tracks. Its windows form a repeated pattern of pale rectangles. Some are still illuminated despite the hour. During the 19th century, Britain becomes the world's leading industrial power. Steam engines drive machinery in textile mills, mines, ironworks, and workshops. Railways carry coal toward factories, manufactured goods toward markets, and workers toward rapidly expanding towns. The railway does not merely pass through industrial Britain, it helps create it. Coal reaches cities in greater quantities. Raw cotton travels from ports to mills. Finished cloth moves outward. Iron rails, wheels, boilers, bridges, and tools generate further demand for mining and manufacturing. Each new line requires metal. Each locomotive requires coal. Each station encourages trade. Progress begins feeding itself, which is convenient for investors and rather exhausting for everyone else. The factory beside you glows more brightly as the train draws near. Through one upper window, you glimpse belts and shafts moving beneath the ceiling. Figures stand near machines, small against the size of the room. Perhaps they're finishing a late shift. Perhaps another group will arrive before dawn. Industrial work often follows the clock with a strictness that railway time would admire. Factory bells announce beginnings and endings. Gates may close against late workers. Wages can be reduced for missed hours. Machinery sets the pace, and human bodies must follow. You remember the gentleman checking his silver watch, troubled by a difference of less than a minute. In the mill, a minute may cost someone part of a wage. The train passes a canal covered with thin ice. Barges rest along the bank, their dark shapes dusted with snow. Before railways dominate inland transport, canals carry huge quantities of coal, stone, pottery, and other heavy goods. Even after trains arrive, canals remain useful, though they seem painfully slow beside your rushing carriage. A horse on the towpath would once pull a loaded barge mile after mile. Now the locomotive sweeps past in seconds. Still, speed does not always defeat economy. Heavy goods can remain cheaper to move by water. Industrial Britain therefore becomes a web of old and new systems, roads beside canals, canals beside rails, and carts waiting at station yards. One odd result of railway expansion is the appearance of houses and buildings sliced strangely by new routes. Lines run behind gardens, beneath streets, and between neighbourhoods. In some places, residents can look from an upstairs window directly toward passing passengers. You glance at a terrace standing close to the embankment. A woman in a nightcap looks back at you from a bedroom window, for one brief instant. Both of you appear equally surprised. Then a house slips behind the carriage. You wonder whether she sees trains so often that they enter her dreams, or whether she has simply spent years regretting her choice of curtains. The town thickens around the railway. Workshops crowd near sidings. Wagons stand loaded with coal. Piles of timber rise beneath tarpaulins. A gasworks spreads across several acres, its large round structures looming through the snow like enormous metal drums. Gaslighting transforms many Victorian streets, Stations, factories, shops, and homes. Coal is heated to produce gas, which travels through pipes and burns in lamps. The system extends working and commercial hours, but it also brings smoke, odours, leaks, and industrial structures into urban landscapes. A row of street lamps follows a road beneath the railway bridge. Their glow reflects on wet stone. Several workers walk beneath them, shoulders bent against the cold. Their boots leave dark marks in the snow. One carries a metal lunch tin, another has a scarf wrapped around his mouth to protect against smoke and wind. They do not look toward the train. Perhaps they are too tired. Perhaps first-class windows have become part of the scenery. Academic opinion remains unsettled over whether railways mainly improved life in industrial towns or deepened the pressures of rapid urban growth. Trains increase access to food, employment, goods, and travel. They also encourage overcrowding, demolition, noise, pollution, and sharper divisions between prosperous districts and poor streets. From your moving window, improvement and hardship appear side by side. A grand station rises ahead with an arched roof and a brightly lit entrance. Hotels and offices surround it. Shops display goods behind broad windows, only a few streets away. Cramped courts hide between factories. The locomotive slows but does not stop. Your train follows a line that curves around the station, passing above a maze of points and sidings. Below you, workers move with lamps between wagons. A small engine pushes freight trucks toward a warehouse. Its whistle is higher than that of your locomotive. Almost impatient, steam surrounds it, turning the yard into a shifting landscape of iron and cloud. The parcel owner wakes fully and looks outside. He tells you that the town was smaller when he last passed through. The gentleman replies that everything is larger now. There is neither approval nor complaint in his voice, only recognition. Beyond the busier streets, the buildings gradually loosen. Factories give way to workshops, then warehouses, then rows of newer houses built along the edge of town. Snow lies more cleanly here, less stained by soot. A church spire rises among the roofs. Behind it, another chimney continues smoking. The old landmark and the new stand together, each claiming the skyline. Your eyes grow heavy again. The passing town begins to blend with memory. Chimneys become trees. Factory windows become station lamps. Telegraph wires stretch like musical lines through the dark. You close your eyes, but the journey continues behind them. You dream of iron bridges crossing white fields. You dream of mills breathing steam into the sky. You dream of villages pulled closer to cities by shining rails. The railway carries people away from familiar places and brings unfamiliar things to their doors. Newspapers arrive earlier. Food travels farther. Work moves elsewhere. Time becomes stricter. Distance becomes smaller. Even sleep feels changed. You're resting in motion, dreaming across counties that previous generations would cross slowly by road. The train leaves the industrial town behind. Its glow fades through the snow, though the smoke remains visible for several miles. Fields return. A farmhouse lamp shines near a frozen lane. The compartment sways gently, and your reflection settles once more over the glass. Half awake, you watch factories, villages, embankments, and sleeping fields flow together beneath the railway night, until the whole changing country seems to breathe with the rhythm of the wheels. The industrial glow fades behind you, and the darkness beyond the window grows quieter again. For a while, there is almost nothing to see. The glass holds your reflection, pale beneath the lamp while the carriage sways through the last deep hours of night. The gentleman sleeps with his chin lowered. The parcel owner has folded his coat beneath one cheek and rests against the corner, finally managing to remain on his own side of the seat. You drift with them. The wheels no longer sound separate from your breathing. Their rhythm moves beneath every thought, steady enough that you stop listening for each joint in the rails. The locomotive seems farther away now, reduced to a muted pulse and an occasional sigh of steam. Then the blackness outside begins to change. It is not yet light, it is simply less dark. The window slowly turns from a mirror into a sheet of grey. Your reflection fades around the edges. Beyond it, the snow-covered landscape begins to return in uncertain shapes. A hedge appears first, then a field, then the dark line of a distant wood. Dawn arrives in winter without confidence. It does not burst over the horizon. It gathers quietly beneath the clouds, lifting the night a little at a time. You open your eyes fully. The compartment looks different in this weak natural light. The velvet seats have lost their rich colour. The brass fittings seem duller. The overhead lamp, so important during the night, now burns with a tired yellow flame that no longer reaches every corner. You notice the marks of the journey. Soot rests along the window ledge. Damp patches darken the floor near the door. Crumbs remain on the seat where the pie and onion tart were eaten. The folded newspaper still carries a faint crease from its service against the draught. The carriage has spent the night protecting you, but it does not look refreshed by the effort. Neither do the passengers. The gentleman wakes first. He lifts his head, blinks at the pale window, and checks his watch before doing anything else. This feels entirely appropriate. The parcel owner wakes next, rubbing one hand across his face. A deep line from the seam of his coat marks his cheek. He notices you looking and turns toward the window, hoping perhaps that dawn will erase it. It does not. Victorian overnight travel often leaves passengers arriving rumpled, stiff, smoky, and far less elegant than they appeared at departure. Even first-class accommodation cannot prevent crushed clothing, aching necks, cold feet, and faces marked by uneasy sleep. Travellers may prepare themselves before arrival with combs, brushes, hand mirrors, and small washing articles carried in cases or bags at major stations. Waiting rooms sometimes offer opportunities to wash and arrange clothing, though privacy and cleanliness vary. You have no private dressing room. You have one glove, a sleeve, and a window dim enough to hide most damage. The gentleman removes a small comb from his pocket and runs it carefully through the hair above his ears. He then smooths his moustache with 2 fingers. The operation takes less than a minute. The result seems to satisfy him. The parcel owner presses both palms over his hair and hopes for the best. Outside, the snow has stopped. Flakes no longer strike the glass. The storm has left the fields beneath a smooth white covering that reflects the growing light. Fences emerge as dark lines. Trees stand motionless, their branches heavy with snow. Smoke rises straight upward from a cottage chimney. The wind has weakened. You can see the track curving ahead now. 2 steel lines cutting through the white landscape. Telegraph poles continue beside them, each wire holding a narrow ridge of snow. A fox moves across a field in the distance. Its coat appears dark against the ground. It pauses, turns its head toward the train, then disappears through a hedge. The sight lasts only seconds. A curious effect of railway travel is the new view it gives passengers into land that was once private, remote, or hidden from roads. Trains pass behind houses, across embankments, through cuttings, and over fields. Travellers glimpse back gardens, farmyards, factory courts, and stretches of countryside rarely seen by strangers before. The railway creates an audience that never stops to ask permission. A farm comes into view below the embankment. Snow covers the roof of a stone barn. Cattle stand near a wall, their breath forming clouds in the cold. A man carries 2 buckets across the yard. He looks up as the train passes. You raise your hand slightly, though he is too far away to notice. Morning work has already begun. Cows must be milked. Fires must be lit, bread must be baked. The railway may have carried you through the night. But the countryside continues according to older needs. The gentleman opens the curtain fully. Pale light fills the compartment. He examines the station timetable, then announces that the train has recovered some of its delay. The parcel owner says this is good. You're not sure for whom, but the statement seems safe. 19th century railway companies take pride in punctual arrival, yet winter weather regularly disrupts schedules. Snow can block lines, freeze points, and delay engines waiting for water or coal. A train may lose time during the night and regain part of it on clearer sections. This encourages drivers and officials to balance punctuality against safety. The balance is not always perfect. Transport scholars remain divided about whether Victorian railway culture placed too much value on keeping time, especially when companies face public pressure to maintain fast services. Strict schedules improve coordination, but haste can increase risk when weather, equipment, or track conditions are poor. Your arrival matters. Arriving safely matters more. This principle sounds obvious until a platform full of impatient passengers begins staring at a station clock. The locomotive whistles at a crossing in daylight. The sound feels less threatening. You can see the small gatekeeper's cottage beside the road. A woman stands near the gate with a shawl around her shoulders. She waits until the train has passed, then begins to open the road again. Her task is simple but essential. At level crossings, gates must be moved to protect trains from carts, animals, and pedestrians, in some places. Keepers live beside the line so they can respond throughout the day and night. A rather charming oddity is that some crossing keepers decorate their small gardens with white stones, shells, clipped plants, and painted borders. The railway may shake the windows and fill the air with soot, but there is still room for a neat row of flowers when winter allows. The keeper's cottage slips behind you. The sky grows brighter. Colour returns slowly. The snow becomes blue in shadow and pale gold where the horizon catches the first weak light. Red brick appears in distant houses. Green survives in a few fir trees. The compartment also regains colour. The velvet is red again. The gentleman's coat is dark brown rather than black. The parcel paper is creased and greasy, with a faded blue stamp near one corner. The man lifts it and checks the string. Whatever remains inside has survived the night with admirable determination. You rub your hands together. The air is still cold, but dawn makes it feel less severe. Perhaps this is merely psychological. Light persuades the body that discomfort is temporary. The train passes a village station without stopping. A porter sweeps snow from the platform. Two women wait beside a stack of baskets. A boy carries newspapers beneath one arm. Their faces turn toward the passing carriages, then away. Soon another town appears ahead. Church roofs, chimneys, warehouses, and clustered houses rise from the white ground. Smoke gathers over them in a low blue haze. The gentleman puts away his comb. The parcel owner reties his scarf. You straighten your coat and retrieve your ticket. The night has not ended entirely, but it has loosened its hold. You can now see where you're going. The rails shine ahead beneath the pale morning sky, while behind you the snow-covered miles fade into memory. The carriage carries its tired passengers toward the waking town, and dawn enters through the glass with every turn of the wheels. The waking town gathers around the railway one roof at a time. First come scattered cottages standing beyond white fields. Then workshops appear beside the line, their chimneys beginning to smoke. Warehouses rise behind them, followed by terraces, church towers, and the dark outlines of cranes near a goods yard. The train begins its final approach. You feel the change in every movement. The locomotive no longer pulls with the same determined force. The wheels soften their rhythm. Couplings shift between the carriages, sending a slow series of gentle knocks along the train. The gentleman opposite places his watch securely inside his waistcoat and buttons his coat. The parcel owner lifts the brown bundle from between his boots and rests it on his knees. You gather your gloves, ticket, and scarf. After an entire night inside one small compartment, it is surprisingly easy to lose track of your possessions. A glove slips beneath a seat, a newspaper becomes part of the draft protection, a scarf enters service as a pillow and emerges looking as though it has fought bravely in a minor war. You check the floor carefully. Nothing appears to be missing. Your neck, however, may never be the same. The train passes rows of signal posts. Their coloured arms and lamps guide the locomotive through a widening maze of tracks. Sidings branch towards sheds and platforms. Freight wagons wait beneath a layer of snow. A small shunting engine moves slowly across the yard, releasing white steam into the pale morning. Railway stations become some of the most important public spaces of the Victorian age. They serve as gateways to towns, centres of employment, meeting places, freight depots, and symbols of modern engineering. Major terminals may combine iron roofs, glass walls, booking offices, waiting rooms, refreshment counters, hotels, and enormous clocks visible from almost every platform. They are built to impress. They are also built to prevent several thousand confused people from walking onto the wrong train. Success varies. Your train enters beneath a broad roof of iron and glass. The light changes at once. Morning becomes filtered and grey, softened by smoke collecting beneath the rafters. Sound grows larger. Every wheel echoes. Every whistle rises toward the roof and returns. Porters call to one another. Doors slam along distant platforms. A bell rings beside a booking office. Somewhere, a milk can falls over with a crash, impressive enough to suggest the collapse of civilization. Nobody reacts for long. The platform beside you is already busy. People wait in winter coats beneath hanging lamps. Some watch the arriving train eagerly. Others stare with the dull patience of those who have been awake far too early. A woman holds a bouquet wrapped in paper. A young man stands on his toes to inspect each passing window. Two children wave at every compartment, apparently willing to greet anyone. The gentleman looks through the glass, searching the crowd. The parcel owner does the same. You wonder who may be waiting for them. The brakes begin to grip. A faint metallic scent reaches the compartment. The wheels squeal against the rails, high and sharp beneath the station roof. Your body leans forward as the train loses its final speed. The locomotive releases a deep sigh. Steam pours along the platform. The carriage rolls past a clock showing the morning hour, past a porter pushing an empty trolley, past a pile of trunks labelled for destinations you will never visit. Then it stops. The silence is not complete. The station remains full of footsteps, voices, whistles, and escaping steam. Yet beneath you, the endless rhythm of the rails has ended. Your body continues to expect movement. For a strange second, the stationary compartment seems to sway. Travellers often describe this lingering sensation after long journeys. The body learns the rocking of the train and continues to feel it once the wheels are still. You may step onto firm ground and sense the platform moving beneath you, as if the railway has quietly followed you out. The gentleman opens the door. Cold station air enters, carrying soot, coffee, horses, damp stone, and morning fog. A porter appears immediately. The gentleman points toward the hat box in the rack. The porter reaches up, lowers it safely, and accepts it without any sign that it nearly attacked the compartment during the night. The parcel owner stands and lifts his brown package. He turns toward you. For the first time, he introduces himself, though his name is almost lost beneath a whistle from the next platform. You offer yours in return. It feels peculiar to exchange names now, after sharing food smells, draughts, danger, sleep, and several hours of silence. He smiles and wishes you a safe onward journey. Then he steps down into the crowd. The gentleman follows. A neatly dressed younger man approaches him at once, taking the hat box and asking about the delay. The gentleman begins explaining before both feet are fully on the platform. Punctuality has survived the journey. You remain in the compartment for one final moment. The empty seats face one another beneath the weakening lamp. The woman's place is still vacant. The folded newspaper rests near the window. A dark mark on the velvet shows where the onion bag spent part of the night. It is only a railway carriage, yet it has become a room filled with vanished presences. You remember the woman guarding her leather bag, the man sleeping against your shoulder, the gentleman examining every clock as though preparing a legal case against time itself. You remember the isolated signalman standing among levers, the fireman feeding coal into the furnace, and the workers clearing frozen points in darkness. You remember the goose staring from its basket. That goose may remain the most confident passenger of all. One small curiosity of Victorian stations is the Lost Property Office, where abandoned umbrellas, gloves, parcels, books, walking sticks, and stranger objects are collected. Reports sometimes list false teeth, musical instruments, cages, and items that raise more questions than railway staff wish to answer. A passenger may forget an umbrella. Forgetting a set of teeth suggests a much more complicated morning. You inspect the rack once more, then step down. The platform feels solid. Though your legs disagree, they expect the floor to tilt and sway. You pause beside the carriage until balance returns. Steam curls around your boots. Above you, the great roof vanishes into smoke. Condensation gathers on the glass and falls in slow drops, almost like indoor rain. The engine stands at the front of the train, black, shining and tired. Melted snow runs along its boiler. The crew move around it, checking fittings and speaking to station workers. The fire that carried you through the night still glows inside. It is easy to admire the locomotive now that it has safely delivered you. During the journey, it felt dangerous. At arrival, it feels heroic. This change of opinion is one of travel's kinder tricks. Those who study the social effects of railways continue to dispute whether arrival at the Victorian station represents the triumph of technology over distance, or the beginning of a world increasingly governed by schedules, crowds, and mechanical speed. The railway grants freedom to move, but it also teaches society to hurry. You feel both truths while standing beneath the clock. The journey has saved time. It has also made you aware of every minute. A porter pushes a cart past you. The wheels rattle over the platform stones. Behind him walks the woman who left your compartment earlier in the night. For a moment, you think fatigue has invented her. Then she notices you. She's accompanied by the same figure who met her at the snowy station. They must have travelled onward by another service or carriage. She offers a small nod. You return it. No words are needed. You shared one part of the night. That is enough. They disappear through the crowd. The parcel owner has also vanished. The gentleman stands near the booking office, still speaking about the timetable. Around you, strangers reunite, separate, hurry, wait, lift luggage, and search for onward trains. The railway gathers human lives together briefly, then sends them in different directions. You walk toward the exit. Each step carries you farther from the carriage and closer to the waking streets outside, through the station doors. You can see snow resting on rooftops. Carts move along the road. Shopkeepers raise shutters. A newspaper boy calls the morning headlines. The world has continued while you travelled. Night has become morning. Distance has become memory. You pause once and look back. Steam drifts along the platform, hiding parts of the train and revealing them again. The windows of your carriage are pale now, their warm night glow extinguished by dawn. Soon another set of passengers will enter. They will bring different parcels, different worries, different silences. Perhaps one will sit beside the window and notice the soot along the ledge. Perhaps another will find the faded warmth of the foot warmer. The carriage will continue without remembering you. But you will remember it. You will remember snow falling beyond the glass while signals passed through darkness. You will remember the steady wheels, the trembling lamp, and the quiet company of people whose lives touched yours for only a few hours. And now, as you leave the station behind, let the sounds begin to soften. Let the whistle fade into the distance. Let the footsteps grow quieter beneath the high roof. The snow outside is no longer driven by wind. It rests peacefully along the streets, on window sills, on the shoulders of statues, and across the roofs of waiting carriages. You no longer need to watch the timetable. You no longer need to guard your ticket. The journey is complete. The rails stretch behind you through fields, villages, tunnels, factories, bridges, and sleeping stations. But they ask nothing more from you tonight. You may set down the parcel you have been carrying. You may loosen the scarf around your neck. You may allow your shoulders to sink, slowly and comfortably, as though settling into a seat far softer than Victorian velvet. The locomotive rests beneath its cloud of steam. The workers move more quietly now. Even the great station clock seems less demanding. Its hands continue onward, but you do not have to follow them. Outside, pale morning light touches the snow without disturbing it. Chimneys breathe gently into the still air. Windows glow in houses where kettles begin to warm, yet you remain sheltered from every obligation. The rattling carriage becomes distant. The firm seat becomes a bed. The cold glass becomes the cool side of a pillow. You can let the railway carry the last of your thoughts away, each one passing like a telegraph pole beside the window, appearing briefly, then slipping into softness behind you. There's nothing left to check, no connection to miss, no luggage to retrieve, no station name to read through the storm, only the quiet memory of wheels moving through snow, steady and low, growing fainter with every breath. You are warm now. You are still. The night journey has carried you safely to rest. And as the final thread of steam dissolves beneath the station roof, you let your eyes close, your breathing lengthen, and the whole Victorian world fade into a calm, gentle whisper, sweet dreams,